Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Bureau of Automotive Repairs Advisory Group meeting, our first of calendar year 2023. I want to welcome everyone since the last time we met in October of 2022. So I know it's a little late into the year to be saying this, but Happy New Year to everyone. Hope everyone had a really nice holiday season. I'm Patrick DeRay, Chief of the Bureau of Automotive Repair, and it gives me great pleasure to be hosting today's meeting. We've got a busy agenda, and I want to quickly get to it, but first a few introductions. First, our moderator today is Tricia St. Clair. You might have heard Tricia's voice. We are doing this meeting as we are now attempting to do with all of our open meetings. Thank you to an act of the legislature, which has provided the ability for us, and this was something that came about as a result of the pandemic. One of maybe the silver linings is the ability to do and host meetings both in person and virtually, and still maintain compliance with the Open Meeting Act requirements of the state of California. Webcaster Bryce Penny to my right. I also have our co-moderator, forgot to mention Zach Richardson, who is the kind of be-all in our organizing meetings and everything else that goes on scheduling-wise in the Bureau's executive office. So there's Zach also to my right. And then we have a few members that we need to introduce from the BAR Advisory Group, and we'll do that both for the in-person attendees as well as the virtual WebEx attendees. I want to remind everyone that this meeting is being webcast, and that webcast is recording today's meeting and will be available on the Bureau's website sometime next week, probably towards the middle to latter part of the week. Let's start with our introductions of our BAR Advisory Group members. I'll go to the far right, Mr. Molodonov.
Yeah, it looks like it's on now. Well, now it's on.
Good morning, Jack Molodonov on behalf of the California Auto Body Association.
Thank you.
Dave Robinette from ICAR, Northwest Region, Principal for Business Development.
My name is Bud Rice, and I'm filling in for Nikki Ayers today, and I promise to behave myself. You promise. Thank you.
That'll be short-lived. John Gallo, California Automotive Business Coalition.
Matt Webb with the Automotive Oil Changes.
Jeff Cox with the Automotive Maintenance and Repair Association.
All right, thank you. Those are the in-person attendees. We also have several advisory group members sitting in virtually. I don't know if in the comfort of their own home or somewhere else, but we want to make sure that they are recognized. Moderator, I'm not sure how you want to go about introducing them, but we'll just, hopefully they won't have the ability to speak over each other, but I guess we'll do this I'll call them out, and maybe that's the best way to do it, because I know who's attending in person versus virtually via the WebEx. Mr. Conover, would you please introduce yourself?
Good morning, Pat. Thank you. Gary Conover, representing the California Automotive Wholesalers Association.
And David Kusup. Dave, I believe you're muted.
Yeah, you think I'd know this by now. Good morning again. Thank you, Dave Kusa, Automotive Service Councils of California. Morning, thanks.
Thank you very much. Filling in as an alternate for Brian Moss is Les Weiser. Les, have you joined us yet for the meeting?
This is the moderator. He has not yet joined you.
Okay, I will just prepare everyone. Les Weiser is with the California New Car Dealers Association. He's an alternate for Brian Moss. Jason Mangles? I do not believe, has Jason joined us?
He has not.
Okay, Jason Mangles is with AAA Northern California. How about Andrew McGee?
Present and accounted for, Andrew McGee. I'm from Solano Community College in Vallejo, California.
And representing Andrew, the California Automotive Teachers.
Correct.
Megan McKernan, I heard you check in.
Good morning, Patrick and everybody else. Megan McKernan, Automobile Club of Southern California.
All right, welcome. How about Ruben Parra, also with California Automotive Teachers? Ruben?
Hello, everybody. This is Ruben Parr with California Automotive Teachers. Glad to be here.
Thank you, Ruben. Saren Taylor?
Saren has not yet joined the meeting.
Okay, I'll introduce him for when he does come in. Saren is with the Personal Insurance Federation of California, also known as PIF. The C is silent. All right, good morning. One other housekeeping, just make sure your phones are on vibrate or silent mode so we don't have that interruption to deal with. I also have one other thing I want to introduce, a leadership team in the executive office. I'll start with the first person I see, Bill Thomas, who is Deputy Chief of Field Operations and Enforcement Division. To his right, my left, would be Linda Jansen, who's the Deputy Chief of Licensing, Consumer Assistance, and Administration Division. Clay Leak runs all things smog check and IT services for the Bureau. And then we have, let's see, that's our Matt Gibson. I'll call you out because you've joined our front office, our executive office, to work on all things relating to the implementation of a bill that was chaptered last year, AB 471. A number of reforms that were included in that bill that we're working diligently to implement, including a vehicle safety systems inspection program that must be in place with regulations adopted by next January. All right, that should do it for us. We're going to now move into, unless there's any questions before we move forward with the first presentation. Any questions? Any comments? Okay, well, welcome. Enjoy the meeting. One last thing for me. I always have to do these reminders. We are having, following the meeting that should adjourn, it's scheduled till 1 o'clock today. We may adjourn early if we get through our presentations, but not at the rate at which I'm speaking right now to kick us off. So we're probably going to be pushing that 1 o'clock hour. But at 2 o'clock, we will have a workshop. Not our traditional regulatory workshop, as you might think, where we look at a draft regulation and get input from the stakeholders and public regarding that package. This is more of a workshop designed to, and it was specifically requested by Mr. Gallo to my left with the California Automotive Business Coalition and others, to start asking if we could get a forum or a meeting scheduled to discuss electronic transactions and some of the challenges that are being faced with some of our point of sale system providers or software providers who put the systems in place for these electronic transactions in automotive repair to occur. And we said, sure, you get us a list and we'll certainly invite them to the table or to the party. And so today, making good on that commitment, we are scheduling a workshop, a meeting to discuss the requirements of the Automotive Repair Act and the regulations as it relates to essentially the paperwork requirements, I'll call it, estimate, authorization, and invoice requirements, and some of the other requirements for, that are paperwork in nature, record keeping, for example. and to then allow for a discussion with the automotive repair industry and hopefully the software providers and others who are in attendance for that workshop. All right, that should do it for all of the reminders and introductions. So let's get going. Our first presentation today is on the Department of Consumer Affairs, or DCA News and Updates. Karina Smith is joining us today from the department's executive office. Karina, are you here? Karina?
Yes, I'm here.
Oh, you are. You're here virtually. Okay.
Yes, I am. Good morning.
Good morning. Welcome.
Hello and good morning, Bureau Chief DeRice and advisory group members. Happy New Year and thank you for allowing me an opportunity to provide the Department of Consumer Affairs update today. I'm Karina Smith with the Division of Programs and Policy Review. First item is new DCA staff. We are very excited to announce that the governor appointed leaders to DCA boards and bureau relations team this fall. Melissa Gear is serving as DCA's new deputy director, and Yvonne Durantes is serving as the new assistant deputy director. We are also pleased to announce the appointment of Kathleen Nichols as Chief of Division of Investigation. She was sworn in on December 5th. Ms. Nichols has extensive law enforcement experience with over 26 years of investigating and supervisor experience. The department has begun the process to fill the deputy chief position in the Health Quality Investigation Unit. DCA Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Steering Committee. The department established its first Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Steering Committee to guide the department's equity strategy, initiatives, and action plans. The DEI committee held its kickoff meeting on November 9th, and its second meeting will be held later this month. Additional resources will be forthcoming that the Bureau will be able to use and incorporate into their strategic plans, recruitment processes, etc. The committee will concentrate on three key areas: workforce, find and keep diverse talent; workplace, actively educate leaders and employees to raise awareness and foster an inclusive culture; and marketplace, be sensitive to diverse backgrounds and perspectives of consumer applicants and licensees. Strategic planning, to more effectively advance equity and drive outcomes that increase opportunity for all. Strategic plans for July 2023 and beyond must be developed or updated in accordance with Governor Gavin Newsom's executive order. DCA is revising its strategic planning processes to include more inclusive public engagement, data analysis, and incorporation of diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI, into strategic planning. The DEI committee will provide input to the strategic planning processes in the coming months. DCA will begin implementing the revised processes and working with boards and bureaus on updating existing strategic plans or developing new ones by March 2023. New strategic plan and logo. DCA released its new strategic plan in November and we officially transitioned to a new logo January 3rd, 2023. The new logo will be implemented gradually throughout 2023. Existing items with the previous DCA logo are still valid during the transition and do not need to be replaced or updated. DCA board and bureau leadership have been given information and resources to help with the new logo's implementation. A centralized website is also available at www.dca.ca.gov/logo. The new plan and logo represent the department's next chapter and future, with the consumer protection continuing to guide our mission and priorities. DCA holds itself to a high standard as a licensing entity, regulator, educator, and service provider. Additionally, the plan incorporates our strong commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion, as well as our shared commitment to each and every consumer. The new logo not only displays our state officials' colors, but it also visually represents the DCA's vision, together protecting California consumers. The shield symbolizes DCA's strong and long-standing protection mandate. The state symbolizes all 40 million Californians DCA has pledged and honored to serve. The star symbolizes consumer protection as DCA's true guiding principle, its own North Star. If you have any questions, please contact Melissa Gear, Deputy Director of Board and Bureau Relations. Required trainings reminder. Now is the time to go over all the necessary trainings and submit your certificates of completion to your executive officer and DCA at memberrelations@dca.ca.gov. Advisory group members must complete sexual harassment prevention within the first year and every 2 years thereafter, and defensive driver training within the first year and every 4 years. For more information, a mandatory trainings page has been created to help members identify, access, and track specific trainings. The page includes direct links to mandatory trainings as well as pertinent information, the policies specific to these training courses. The page is available via DCA Board Member Resource Center page under Required Board Member Training. You can also reach out to Melissa or Yvonne. Thank you again for this opportunity. DCA and BBR team look forward to collaborating and assisting you throughout the new year, particularly as you prepare for and complete your 2023 Sunset Review, which Chief DeRice will discuss with you later this morning. Thank you.
Thank you, Karina, for the update on DCA news. Any questions, comments from Bar Advisory Group members? None here at the in-person representation. How about from the members who are participating via WebEx? All right, any public comment regarding any of the updates? Thank you, Karina, for reminding me that I'm actually on the agenda today, the 5th item. So yes, I'll be giving an update on the Sunset Review. All right, Karina, I think you escaped without any questions or comments. Appreciate the update, and we'll look forward to seeing you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next presentation is Legislation and Regulations Update, our standing presentation from our formidable team. We now have it back to a team of 2. We were down to 1 for some time. Holly O'Connor and Kayla Shelton, Kayla being our newest representative in the front office. Sorry I failed to introduce you, but I knew you were coming up on the agenda. They are representatives or members of the staff in the Bureau's executive office, so welcome today. And I know there's a bill that I just pointed out to you because Jack reminded me of it yesterday, and it missed the cut, so to speak, when we went to post all of our presentations roughly 10 days ago or more. So there's been some bills that have been introduced since the posting of the presentation, so at least one that we know of. So welcome today, and take it away.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Holly O'Connor, and Kayla and I will be providing our presentation on the legislation as well as our pending regulatory packages. These are some important legislative dates. On January 1st, the 2022 chapter bills took effect. On January 2nd, the legislature reconvened. And also not up there, but on February 17th, that is the last day for bills to be introduced. On the next slide, it shows the chapter 2022 bills, AB 1740 and 2496 and SB 1087. And so, you know, these bills are just the automotive repair dealer related bills that BAR was tracking. There may be other new labor, business, and other laws that could affect the automotive repair industry as well. And BAR recommends contacting one of the trade associations on the BAR Advisory Group for more information. Also, as Pat just said, we just became aware of a new catalytic converter bill, SB 55. And this bill would prohibit a dealer or retailer from selling a new vehicle unless the catalytic converter on that vehicle has been engraved or etched with the VIN number of the vehicle to which it is attached. Next, we will go over our pending regulation proposals. We have the smog check equipment and station requirements, also known as our DAD specification update package. And we have 3 AB 471 packages we're working on, the citation and remedial training programs, the ARD registration application requirements, and the Vehicle Safety Systems Inspection Program. The first one, the DAD specification update. This, on the next slide, it replaces the current OBD DAD specification with a more comprehensive and updated version to provide additional tools to combat smog check fraud, and allows the DAD to communicate with new vehicles that use a communication protocol that is not supported by the current generation of DADs. We're currently working with DCA Legal to prepare this package for approval by the Business Consumer Services and Housing Agency. And once this is approved by DCA Legal, we submit to agency for their review and approval. The next package is the citation and remedial training programs, which Kayla will go over for us.
Yep. Good morning, everyone. So these regulations will bring ARD violations of the Automotive Repair Act into the program while allowing ARDs the ability to contest certain violations via an informal review process. These regulations will also create a process in which ARDs can attend remedial training to prevent the disclosure of most citations. Lastly, it will outline remedial training certification requirements. Currently, we are finishing the final phase documents for review with DCA Legal. The next steps will be official submittal to OAL for filing. Thank you.
And one more slide. This one goes over our ARD registration application requirements, and the purpose of this package is to define nationally recognized and industry accepted educational certifications, and it establishes a process for the Bureau to review and approve educational certifications that do not meet that definition. This also establishes a process for recognizing the educational certifications on the application. And one of the new requirements is that applicants must include an email address. I also want to note that there is currently a vehicle license plate requirement for mobile automotive repair dealers, and that's already a requirement in existing regulations. This package is currently in a 15-day extension of the original 45-day public comment period, which ends on January 28th. So once that comment period is over, we'll finalize the FSOR, which is the final statement of reasons, and file with the Office of Administrative Law for approval. The last package, Kayla will also go over for us.
Yep, so the last package has to do with the Vehicle Safety Systems Inspection Program. This package will set standards for the Vehicle Safety Systems inspections. It will create an inspection manual as well as the inspector licensing requirements. At this point in time, we are in the initial review phase with DCA Legal.
And that's all we have for you today. Does anyone have questions?
Thank you, both Holly and Kayla, for that. I know it's a little briefer than
normal, yes.
And it's because the bills haven't all come in yet. The deadline, would you say February 17th? As I learned yesterday from my friend, Mr. Molodanoff, the really heavy introduction of the bills will come in that last day, maybe last week, and hours of before that deadline. So we might see a bunch of other automotive repair dealer bills that we'll be tracking at our April meeting that we'll be updating you on. I just wanted to, real quickly, on the two packages. The two packages, I don't think it was mentioned on the slide, but I'll say it here. The two AB 471 packages on the, I'm trying to find it in my eyes, trying to read the font size here. The Citation and Remedial Training Program for Automotive Repair Dealers, that package, as well as the ARD, or Automotive Repair Dealer Registration Application Requirements, both those packages nearing their public processes and our final steps to getting them adopted by the Office of Administrative Law. I think our goal for both those packages is April 1st. I've been telling people that. Obviously, that's dictated by the review process after the final statement of reasons has been reviewed and approved not only by our own department and our Business Consumer Services and Housing Agency. Those are the two kind of umbrella or parental departments that we work through, and then we'll file with the Office of Administrative Law. But the goal is to get, and then OIL has some time to review. But April 1st adoption and then July 1st effective date for those two packages. And then the final package, I don't know if it says it here, the Vehicle Safety Systems Inspection Program Regulations, the final package for AB 471 implementation, that has to be adopted. The regulations, as the statute requires, has to be adopted by January 1 of next year. We're hoping that that might occur sooner so that we can actually make them effective and start implementation on January 1. But the deadline for adoption is January 1, 2024. All right, I think that does it for just the kind of the additional comments to your presentation. I'll open it up for comments from Bar Advisory Group members. I'll look to the left first this time. I did look to the right, but Jack didn't have his hand up, so he was slow on the draw there. Mr. Rice.
Bud Rice, just real quick, is there a method online on the Bar website for tracking things that are going on? I mean, we're getting an update here, but 40 days from now or, a month and a half, I might want to go back up and see if there's been any updates with the calendaring or anything like that. So where I'm going is it'd be nice if we could follow something that said, here's where we are with this bill, here's the next steps, here's where we are now, so you can follow the legislation or where a package happens to be at a given time with updates.
Currently on the website, the only updates we really have are the current documents and the public comment time periods. We don't have on there the next steps.
For regulations. That's true for the regulation process. Were you getting more at the legislative updates on some of these bills?
Yeah, so I guess where I'm trying to go is you guys are giving us good info, and to be able to be a partner in following this along with you to see if there's places where we might be able to put in input or thoughts about where we might happen to be, or is there a public comment time frame? Just where are we with these things as they're going along here that is updated on the web, so we can just go up there and kind of see where we are at any given time.
So for the legislation, we have a link on our website that takes you straight to the legislature's public-facing page where you can type in a bill number that you might know about. It also allows you to do a search for automotive repair, for example, by putting in keywords. So that goes back in time, too. That doesn't just look at the current session of the legislature, but also prior sessions if you wanted to go and track or see the status of a bill, whether it was signed into law or whether it died in committee or something of that nature. So that's available through a link on our website, and it's on the slide 2. Slide 2? I'm needing my glasses. The ledge. That's www.leginfo.legislature.ca.gov. So that information is available, but you'll have to hit a link on our website. As for the regulations, fairly slow-moving pace. I don't know of the regulatory adoption process. We could take a look at maybe putting a progress chart or something relating to those packages. There's information, as Holly has mentioned, on our what's that page called? That's our pending regulations page. I don't know exactly what it's titled, but it is available. You can see the latest updates, but most of the progress is fairly slow. Probably wouldn't give you much information between this advisory group meeting and the next one in April. So having said that, though, I think it makes sense to maybe look at adopting a progress chart, because the regulatory adoption process is a fairly a lot of mystique to it, perhaps, for those not on the inside. But the inside baseball talk of regulation adoption, I think all of us as insiders, even we struggle with it sometimes, but that's something we should look at. I would welcome that opportunity to be a little more transparent in that effort.
And along those same lines, the vehicle safety systems inspection, I think it was Matt Gibson that had come in our presentation a while back. And industry's concern is that changes it changes the lamp and brake and lamp inspection programs, and there was some of that was unclear as to what was going to happen to organizations or shops that currently offer that. And does that now go away? And the only thing they can offer now is a vehicle safety inspection system, or is it yes and no, and is it some of this and some of that? So it was a little unclear as to what the outcome was going to be if this was actually passed.
So we were waiting for some comments back on the draft regulations that we've workshopped with the advisory group and other stakeholders. Those comments should be coming back, and we'll get further clarification on how that will unfold, and we hope to have a presentation on all three of those AB 471 packages, because two of them will be ready for implementation on July 1st, and then we'll have the third package on the vehicle safety systems inspection program. We'll have a good idea how we're going to roll that out come January 1 of next year to present at our next advisory group meeting in April.
Thank you.
Mr. Gallo.
Good morning.
Good morning.
The question I have is centered around the new bill that was introduced, SB 55, and the requirement for car dealers to etch the catalytic converters. CalABC, our members, have reached out to law enforcement. We've partnered with them on a program called Etch and Catch, where repair facilities, including our friend Gene Lopez out there, has offered up their shops to hold clinics to etch catalytic converters to make it easier to arrest these criminals. But more importantly, what we're finding is there's companies out there now that are actually making a sticker that can be put on catalytic converters. And so what my recommendation would be is that we consider something like that for the dealers, which would make it a lot easier to try and do that on new vehicles, and something in consideration for an amendment to the bill. It's not going away anytime soon, so whatever laws that we can put into place to protect consumers, but I think we have to find an easier way, especially when you're dealing with fleets of new cars and used cars, and so I would make a recommendation for that.
Thank you, Mr. Gallo. Any other comments from the panel members sitting here? Okay, yes, Jeff.
Just a clarification question. Is on that SB 55, is that just for new cars or is that new and used cars?
I believe it's just new cars for SB 55.
Thank you.
We'll have to take a deeper look into it, though. We just received information about it at a meeting yesterday, so I haven't had time to research it, and I just briefed Holly and Kayla on it this morning as I saw them entering the room, so they haven't even had a chance to digest it. And any other comments? All right, we'll go to advisory group members who are participating via WebEx, see if there's any questions. But before I do, I want to welcome, and I may have just missed it on the agenda, but I saw his face flash across the screen. Mr. Anopolsky, would you please introduce yourself? Well, maybe he's stepped away. Lou? All right, I'll do the introduction for him at the point he joins us for a comment or two. Louis Anopolsky with Knox, Lemon, and Anopolsky LLP, representing in a number of administrative law cases automotive repair dealers. Any comments from the advisory group members who are listening in and participating via WebEx? I see Lou there. He must be muted. Hello there.
Hi there.
Oh, there you are. Good to see you.
Thank you. I'm sorry I'm a little late.
No problem. Any comments for Kayla or Holly? How about, moderator, if you could open it up for public comments?
Thank you. I'll go ahead and open up the question and answer panel. We'll also refer to it as the Q&A panel. If any member of the public would like to make a comment, please type comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of your screen and submit it to all panelists. Or you may simply raise your hand. For attendees who have called into the meeting, you may raise your hand by pressing *3. And we are displaying instructions and we'll give you a moment. All right, I see no requests for comments. Shall I close the Q&A panel?
All right, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
One last question from Mr. Rice.
On that etching one, and I think you said it was new cars only. I guess the underlying question is, the vehicle comes in and it's a replacement. Do we have to etch the replacement when we put a replacement on a non-new vehicle?
We'll take a look at that and have an answer to you at the next advisory group meeting, if not sooner, but that'll be the next opportunity to publicly announce that. I don't know the answer to that question because we just, as I said, became aware of the bill. Additional comments, questions before we excuse these two? I guess not. Thank you, Holly. Thank you, Kayla. We'll see you.
Thank you.
In April. Well, I'll see you sooner than that, but everybody else will see you in April at our next advisory group meeting. Thank you. Our next presentation is unlicensed activity enforcement, some new strategies or strategy that we're actually employing to address this issue. We've had actually a number of presentations we've been giving to task forces and groups dealing with underground economy issues, not just in automotive repair, but other areas. Patrick Lupfi is with the bar's Enforcement Operations Branch. When Bill Thomas was promoted out of the Enforcement Operations Branch to the Executive Office as Deputy Chief for Field Operations and Enforcement, we had a vacancy, and Patrick Lupfi was appointed to that position as a Program Manager 2, running that branch beginning late October of last year. So welcome, Patrick. Good to see you, and thank you for joining me yesterday at the California Automotive Business Coalition presentation that I gave yesterday, and look forward to the presentation today on some of the Bureau's efforts to continue to combat unlicensed activity and some new strategies we're looking at and working on.
All right, good morning, Pat. Good morning, everyone. As introduced, my name is Patrick Lupfi. If we could start with the first slide. So going into unlicensed enforcement activity, it's actually the name of the chapter within the Business and Professions Code that kind of goes over some of this. It starts with section 145, which states in summary that unlicensed activity within any areas regulated by Department of Consumer Affairs is a threat to the public. The law enforcement agencies which oversee this should provide adequate means to address it, and we should address it swiftly, effectively, and in a manner that promotes registration or desire to get registered. The first bullet point here, it does refer to a particular joint enforcement task force, but although it's an accurate statement, I think I'll expand on it. Our PRs come across unlicensed activity not just through these strike forces, but their normal day-to-day operations, whether it's working complaints, performing inspections, et cetera. But because it is an issue that's seen across multiple regulatory agencies, there are several joint efforts that are targeted, that specifically target this type of activity. This particular one, JESF, is a joint enforcement strike force. There's also a labor enforcement task force. There's just in Northern California, there's various SAC cats, I think it's like Delta rats. There's a lot of different ones. There's also a lot of different acronyms. We also have joint efforts with DMV most recently, combating this type of stuff as a joint effort, kind of revolving around catalytic converters, et cetera. But the way that this process works and the way that we address it, I'm going to go over here, is the program representative will prepare in the instant. In order for us to address this swiftly and in the moment, they are able to issue a citation on the spot. When unlicensed activity is identified, that citation is an order of abatement, no monetary fine in that instance, advising the individual that was found of registration requirements and advising them to either stop the activity or get properly registered. Next slide, please. In following up with these, the PR or the program representative will return or perform a follow-up with that facility within typically 30 to 45 days to verify if the unlicensed activity has stopped or if they've been properly registered as a follow-up. In instances where the unlicensed activity has continued, the PR gathers evidence, compiles that evidence along with an investigative report, which is forwarded to headquarters, where it's reviewed by the branch that oversees Enforcement Operations Branch. Those citation packets, that investigative report is reviewed if and when appropriate and meets the guidelines that we've put forth to warrant issuing a monetary citation. Those citations are issued and served to the respondent via the Postal Service. Those citations, as it states here, upon review, they can escalate up to upwards of $5,000 per instance. Next slide, please. So in either instance, whether the non-monetary or the monetary citation, there are provisions that allow for a cited individual to appeal that citation if they feel that the citation was issued in error and that they were not required to get registered. As we were stating, they do have a process to appeal that. There was probably more appeals prior to legislation that was introduced that did away with exempted services. I think some of the appeals previously were instances where services went beyond, or an individual or an entity that was not required to be registered because of the exempted services may have dabbled in some services that did require registration. There may have been some confusion there, so there were some of those appealed. Also, machine shops in some instances were going beyond just the machining of components. Those are some instances that I can think of off the top of my head. But ultimately, with a lot of these citations, I think compliance is either gathered by them stopping or getting registered. Next slide, please. So after we exhaust our citation authority, the next steps that we've had or that we've leveraged and used is continuing to gather evidence, taking that evidence, packaging it up once again into investigative work product. It goes through that same review process, and if and when approved and appropriate, they get submitted to the local DA's office to seek either criminal or civil filing as appropriate or as they deem appropriate, or requesting that they look into it for appropriate action. Because that is pretty much the extent of administrative authority, is the citation part of it. Because they're unlicensed, we don't have the ability to come in there and address things as we would with those that are registered with us, so we have to seek assistance through the DA's office. However, as many shops are experiencing, as state agencies as well are experiencing staffing issues, time, there's a lot of other cases that they're dealing with that affect their workload that they may not be able to address something as low as unlicensed activity when they're dealing with crimes that are far more severe or egregious. Next slide, please. So in recognizing some of those challenges, internally, externally, all entities involved, in some communication and collaboration with the Attorney General's office, we are now leveraging an existing process, which is new to us as a process, in filing for a civil injunction, or looking to using a civil injunction as an alternative process to pursue in addition to or in lieu of a DA filing when appropriate. What a civil injunction is the AG's office on our behalf representing us within a superior court, seeking a civil injunction, requesting that they enjoin from performing the activities in which they're performing. not to be misinterpreted as a civil filing in which we're seeking civil restitution. It ultimately could result in, if when appropriate based on timing, as a TRO. It's a temporary restraining order to stop operating. But this is something that has a little more teeth coming from a superior court, because if someone fails to, if and when civil injunction is awarded, if the respondent fails to follow that order, they then become in contempt of court. And in being in contempt of court, superior court, they're subject to any court sanctions, fines, potential jail time, et cetera. So it does have a little more weight than our abatement orders do administratively. In these processes, the reps that uncover the unlicensed activity are to have discussions with their supervisors, determine what is the best appropriate action, whether it be a DA seeking civil injunction through the AG or a joint effort of both. Next slide, please. So with this new process, the first couple of processes that I was explaining hold true. We still try to do this in a progressive manner to gain compliance. That is our ultimate goal. We'll go through the same abatement order, the cite and fine, and the civil injunction process is very similar to drafting up a report that we would submit to the DA. It's kind of a combination of both. We still got to go out, gather evidence, put it together in an investigative report. It's submitted through the same review process, and when warranted, we forward it to the AG's office for consideration. They do have the opportunity to either accept or deny pursuing what we're requesting, but we do submit it to them for consideration when appropriate to file a civil injunction, as I was just previously explaining in the Superior Court. Next slide, please. So when the AG accepts the presented report for a civil injunction, they will prepare all the filing documents. In preparing these documents, they do submit them when a civil injunction is coming closer to hearing. I had mentioned already a TR, temporary restraining order. As we get closer to hearing, the AGs will reach out to the reps to verify that the activity is still persistent. If and when it is, they generate a declaration. That declaration is provided. They'll then pursue that TRO. Next slide, please. A couple instances. So, as I mentioned, our ultimate goal is to gain compliance, and this can go multiple ways. As a regulatory agency, we're not providing legal guidance or advice to any of these individuals. And in some instances, it's not that they don't wish to get registered. They don't understand or know what they have to do to get past a few things that may be a hurdle to get registered. A couple examples up here. There was an unlicensed transmission repair facility. When they had applied for licensure, it was a family inherited business. Along with that, they had some deficiencies within sales tax issues. They didn't know how to get around it or fix it or get it corrected so that they could get properly registered. So we were dealing with this in this unregistered capacity. Well, when we filed with the AG's office, we do have a discussion. I apologize, I believe it was on the prior slide. As part of that process, the AG will also reach out to BAR and determine whether or not we're seeking to allow them to get registered or not. There are instances like this where someone, due to tax implications, we have no desire to keep them out of the program. We just want them to get properly registered so that they can lawfully operate within the program. And in this instance, the DAG was able to work with the individual, provide legal guidance on what they needed to do to resolve their issues, and ultimately they were able to get registered. There's another instance here where there are going to be several instances where we don't want someone to get registered. We have already taken action against them, or they've been convicted of crimes egregious enough that we don't want to allow them registration and continue impacting the public. This particular instance here was an applicant that was previously convicted for operating a chop shop. They ended up not appearing in court, so this is a default. I'd like to say that we have an update on this. There was some technicalities with the way that it was drafted, but that's getting corrected. We hope to have that back soon. But again, that's a perfect example of when we would not want to allow it to get registered. Next slide, please. Another way that we're leveraging this is in instances in which there's a revocation ordered as part of an administrative hearing. We do have some instances where a respondent neglects to follow this order and decides to continue operating anyways. This is another means in which we are trying to leverage the civil injunction to address the fact that they're continuing to operate. And we do have one that we've prepared and put forth. This one actually, I believe, was due to a technician that was revoked, a smog technician that was revoked, and he was found performing inspections using someone else's license. So we're actually addressing two separate issues, including the unlicensed or the revoked technician through this process. There is another one that just came up that, aside from the ones that were on this slide, that we're going to present to the AG here soon for consideration, in which another example of where we don't have to necessarily follow that progressive when it's not appropriate, or if it's appropriate to skip some of those steps of progressive discipline. There's an instance in Southern California, without mentioning names or places, but wrote up a case, actual fraudulent activity, direct consumer pay that was defrauded money out of a repair transaction. The DA, they're not going to deny acceptance of the case, but they made it pretty much clear that without murder or something a little bit more egregious, they're probably not going to get to it. So that's another instance where we are now going to try to leverage the civil injunction, because of our limited ability administratively, to still get them to stop and cease the activity. Next slide. And that's it. Any questions, comments?
Thank you, Patrick. Really good presentation. Very excited about some of the developments in this area, because we continually get asked, including on the next presentation about sunset review. It's an ongoing concern of the legislature, for sure. Let's see. I wanted to ask you, because I hadn't picked up on this when I reviewed the presentations a few weeks ago. The unlicensed collision repair facility that had been convicted of operating a chop shop, was that actually an applicant? Or was it just an entity that we had come across? Did they actually apply to get registered? Do you remember? Do you know?
Honestly, that one I don't recall. It was going through the process prior to.
Okay. Okay. Just curious. It says applicant, so I.
Was an applicant.
Oh, it was. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Just curious on that. Any questions or comments, Mr. Gallo from the advisory group members?
Yeah, thanks for your presentation, Pat. I really appreciate using this alternative method to handle these unlicensed activities. I know for a long time BAR has been criticized because of the length of time it takes for a case to move forward, and we know the logjam is always at the Attorney General's office. And many shops and many businesses involved in that process are frustrated because of the length of time, but then you get unduly criticized by the media and everybody else that wants to jump on board because of the length of time it takes. I just wonder if there's any avenue or any opportunity to expand that beyond just unlicensed activity. I don't want an answer, because I know you can't answer that question, but I think you need it for consideration, because I think it would take some of the pressure off of not only the Attorney General's office, but also off of BAR to move these cases faster. And so it's just something, food for consideration.
Thank you.
Thank you, John. Any questions, comments? Mr. Maladano.
Thank you, Patrick. It was a good presentation. Just a few questions. I know I read the statistics on in terms of complaints. There's about 15,000 complaints in general, and 2% are probably for unlicensed activity, which is about 300 complaints dealing with unlicensed activity. And I know you mentioned two examples. It was good, transmissions and collision repair. Is there any data on what types of repairs are that are really unlicensed? Is it more auto body? Is it mechanical? Or what are you seeing out there?
I don't have specifics broken down, but I do know that just from personal experience and having overseen the field office previously, it's kind of all over the board. It's not one specific area. There's unlicensed activity in all aspects of automotive repair. It's actually what resulted in some of the legislation requiring registration for mobile mechanics. That was a big one in which it was running rampant for a while. They don't have a place that they're a brick and mortar that they're stationed in, and they just run around through Craigslist or various platforms to solicit services. So it is really all over the board. There's not one area, I think, that is predominant over the next.
And I know you mentioned a couple of the reasons why, two examples, but what is the primary reason why these people are not getting licensed or registered? They don't know about it? Is it education, or they're just trying to avoid being registered with BAR?
So the civil injunction being added to our process, I don't think is going to be majority of the instances. These are going to be it's going to be the ones that become more complicated. Majority of our interaction with anyone in the industry that's unlicensed, it's a lack of knowledge or understanding that it's even a requirement. Majority of them comply and get registered. It's instances with the tax implications that they have no understanding or resources or help without being burdened of paying legal counsel or someone to advise them. So in this particular instance, we're able to gain compliance. So there's going to be situations like that. I think they're going to be far and few between. The other instances are the ones that they have no desire to comply. They've already been revoked. They can't comply. There is nothing that they can do to do so without attempting to go through the process of reapplying at some point through rehabilitation. There's a lot of mechanisms in place if they can attempt to reapply at some point. But I think those are going to be the two most common situations in which civil injunctions are used, and we're trying to put additional things in place to address the unlicensed activity as effectively as we can. But again, I think it's not going to be heavily used because we do gain a significant amount of compliance in our current process.
Yeah. And the last, I guess, more of a comment, and maybe you can confirm that if a facility is doing repair work, but only not for the consumers, but generally like fleet work. So in other words, they have a collision repair facility or they have a transmission facility, but they're not directly communicating with consumers. They're dealing with basically they're sublet, they're getting cars or repairs from ARDs. In those instances, is my understanding, they don't have to be licensed. Is that correct?
So, correct. There are still some instances where not everyone working on a vehicle is required to be registered. If they're solely engaged in the business of performing repairs for commercial businesses, I forget the exact language, and we've had this conversation even with the AG's office for interpretation. In one instance, we were actually told if the cars are on the facility are registered to a commercial business and they have agreements with that, that's fine. But if they're registered to the general public, that is not commercial business repairs at that point. So yes, there are instances where the registration is not required. That's why we have review process in place, both at the field office through the supervisor, through the enforcement operations branch, to ensure that if and when we're issuing citations or pursuing any of these avenues, that it's appropriate for the situation, that the registration is actually required.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Good questions. Additional questions from the WebEx participants of the Bar Advisory Group?
Yeah.
Yes, I see a hand. I can't see who it is. Is it Saren?
Yeah, that's Saren.
Yep. Hi, Saren. We introduced you earlier, and welcome. I think you had not yet joined us at the start of the meeting, but welcome, Saren Taylor with the Personal Insurance Federation of California. Did you have a question, comment for Mr. Lutfi?
I did. Thank you. Yeah, I have it's really more for, I guess, my edification. But so I just wanted to understand if you have an unlicensed, unregistered actor here, and the local district attorney saying basically we're too busy, and so then you decide to elevate it to the attorney general, and if you get to the point where you then get a TRO, what actually then happens? I mean, I just really want to understand. So then you have this TRO. You already have someone who's decided they don't want to comply with the processes and the rules. So what physically happens to stop them from continuing to provide these unlicensed and unregistered services? Do you go in physically and shut them down and lock up the facility, or what actually happens?
I mean, we ourselves are not going to physically shut them down. But as I was mentioning earlier, with a civil injunction, with or without the TRO, even if it's just a civil injunction without the TRO, TROs work similar to interim suspension order in the administrative realm, in which they're issued a restraining order to cease operation until they have an opportunity for hearing, at which point a civil injunction is still granted. So there is a little separation between those two. But in an instance where the civil injunction is granted and the decision is that they're to cease operation, if we find them to continue operating, our responsibility is going to be to gather evidence to support that. And we've yet to hit this point yet, so through practice, this will be confirmed, but these conversations have taken place. Whether or not it's us continuing to go through the Attorney General's office to pursue the contempt of court in providing evidence that they've disregarded the order and that they've continued to operate, or seeking assistance from local authorities that can go in and enforce that same court order and potentially benefit from the civil penalties that come along with that by them entering in and assisting. So the contempt of court has more bite than our administrative abatement order, in that their continued violation of that order subjects them to sanctions of the court. Now, that could be levied fines that they're going to go after them. That could result in jail time if they don't adhere to it. So there are significant consequences to with the whole contempt of court process and the way that works.
Gotcha. So I understand it hasn't actually ever yet had a case that's gotten to that point yet?
I missed the last part.
We haven't actually come to that point yet.
Not yet. We have not got to one that we've had to enforce yet. It appears that I'm hoping most people at that point, if it's got a court order, they're going to stop. But if not, we will address that and cross that bridge when we get there.
Okay. Well, that was sort of my next follow-up, was just to say, have you gotten one where you've actually got what is happening in practice right now when you get to that point of if you're getting a TRO or contempt of court? Has that happened? Have you seen compliance at that point, so you've not needed to go to the next step? Or is this all just new process and really you don't have a concrete example of what's happened?
I think I heard most of what you said, and I'll try to answer it the best I can from what I heard. We have multiple of these currently in the process right now. As a couple of the examples demonstrated, we've been able to gain compliance through the individuals getting registered, so those obviously stopped at that point. There was no need to proceed. There is the one that we're waiting on a default, and there are a couple others that we're waiting for hearing dates to get them granted. But again, once we get to that point, we'll have better examples in the future as to what the outcomes have been.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah, and welcome to the meeting. Yep, fairly new process, so more information to share as we go through some variations to twists and turns as they're presented to us. Any other questions or comments from the advisory group members, either in person or via WebEx? Yeah, Matthew Webb.
What would be the process if there was a situation where, let's just say I went and I purchased a body shop and or any kind of existing repair facility that was already registered, and I didn't have a permit yet, and the process takes 30, 45, 60 days or whatever. So what happens in that interim time? How would that work? If I had already applied for the ARD, but I don't have it yet.
So I don't want to speak too much on behalf of licensing and how they process things, but when an application is submitted, you're talking about some of the additional requirements as far as permits, county licenses, et cetera, is what you're talking about?
No, so it's already an existing facility, so on an existing business that's already there.
So what I can speak on behalf for BAR is, if you assume any other business that is a change of ownership, it requires you to reapply for an ARD for you as the new owner of that business. Any other subsequent required permits, licenses, whether it's for county, city, spray booths, et cetera, your federal tax, all the resale permit and whatnot, those are not required in order to obtain your ARD. It is your requirement as a registrant to ensure, or just as any business owner, to have all the proper licensure across every entity that requires it. For us, for BAR, for the ARD, we list those out. If and when you have them, they're to be provided. But if you don't have them yet, we're not going to hold up a processing of an ARD application and issuance of a license because you don't have your permit yet. However, without the ARD is what allows you to lawfully operate and collect compensation. So without that, you cannot perform repairs. Is that answering your question?
Yeah,
kind of?
I was trying to. So what if, you pay $10 million for this business, so it takes, I don't know what the exact processing time right now is for a ARD, but so if there's a 45-day lag time between there, so that guy can't operate, that new owner can't operate that business?
So I think we're talking maybe best practice on how to approach something. And typically when someone's purchasing a business, They start that paperwork on the front end. There's escrow involved.
Yep.
We see this happen very frequently. We do our best to try to make that transition as seamless as possible, in which the old business owner and the new business owner can switch hands at the same time that the license gets issued. So we have no intent of putting anyone out, but that does it does require that the two individuals are applying and doing everything they're supposed to. If you come to us after the fact, that's a little difficult to help make work. But as long as you're applying for and going through that process, we continuously work with both individuals to make sure it's a seamless transition.
Thank you.
Mr. Gallo.
Just to follow up on Matt's comments and also Pat's, we deal with this with our members a lot, where they're acquiring a business or they're buying a franchise. And I'm just wondering if there's something that the BAR could do to put out guidelines that if you're acquiring an automotive repair business that's existing, you need to do this. Because too often what we're hearing is they're already paying the bill for the business they just bought. To Matt's point, you just paid $10 million for a business. Now you get shut down for 30 to 45 days while the meter's running on this business you just bought. So I'm just wondering if there's something that could be done that creates an interim period where the business does not have to cease operating until escrow and everything else is done. It'd be easy to say, okay, the minute your business goes into escrow, you need to file XYZ to keep from being shut down. But too often what we get is a field representative showing up at a member's location that just bought or just agreed to the franchise terms of taking a business, and they have a field BAR agent telling them, you got to shut down. You don't have a license to operate. You need to shut down until you get your ARD. And so it's a real concern. It's happening more frequent than people imagine. And so I'm just wondering if there, as a group, we can't work on some type of solution that gets instructions out to these owners that if you are experiencing a situation where you're going to sell your business and the buyer is ready to go, here's what you got to do in advance to make sure you're not shut down the day that the meter starts running on your tab. Just food for thought.
All right, John, thank you. Good question. I mean, we're getting outside a little bit of the scope of the presentation for, and Patrick, and I'll jump in here. I'll work with Deputy Chief Jansen and the licensing program to look at giving some instructions for better instructions if they're not available already about time frames that are needed for transitioning a business from one owner to another. Obviously, we have a certain amount of time frame to review that's necessary, and so sharing those kind of time commitments or timelines with the buyer and the seller, the parties that are involved in that transaction would be good, so they know what they're dealing with up front. We get I don't want to say a lot, a fair number of requests at the 11th hour. I won't mention names or anything like that, but I do get the panic email or call that says we need to get this one licensed in this the transfer of ownership process. And it's sometimes it's the delay in the application review because there might be as with any application, we make sure we run it through all the proper channels, not just on the licensing end, but if there's been prior discipline perhaps, or something we've run across, we want to make sure we've looked into that thoroughly. There might be some follow-up questions of the new applicant or the new owner. But sometimes these are, the paperwork's coming to us very last minute in the process. And I've called upon Ben Soma, who oversees the licensing program, to kind of work some magic to get those things done so that there is a seamless transition. I'll hear things. There's a grand opening, a ribbon cutting ceremony scheduled for next Wednesday. What can you do about it? That kind of a thing. I was like, well, let me pick up the phone first of all. Now, just keep in mind, I mean, we're happy to do it, but keep in mind there's someone who's filed the paperwork, very timely, maybe a month ago, that maybe you're bumping out of the line. We try to deal with these first in, first out. Not always is that done, and I realize that sometimes we have to we want to make allowances and not disrupt the operations of a business. But to help in that regard, I think it would behoove us all if we could work on maybe some guidance or some instructions to further give some greater appreciation to what we need and on our end to process the paperwork so we get that information as soon as possible, as soon as it becomes aware to the two parties involved in that transaction.
There's actually another presentation coming up that maybe touches on how that might be expedited in the future as well. And I only know because I have to pinch hit on the demo.
Okay. I didn't realize that, but I was going to suggest maybe a presentation on this with a specific focus on the ownership changes and what we would like to see as far as best practice in terms of filing the paperwork with us.
Not too specific, but it's on the electronic submittal stuff that kind of helps expedite some of that.
Okay. All right, good. Wait, stick around. There might be other questions. Any other Bar Advisory Group member comments? Moderator, could you open it up for public comment on this topic, on this agenda item?
All right, I've opened up the Q&A panel. If any member of the public would like to ask a question on this agenda item, please type comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of your screen and submit it to all panelists. Or you may simply raise your hand. We are displaying instructions and we'll give you a moment. All right, I do not see any requests for questions. Shall I close the Q&A panel?
Yes, please. Thank you,
Okay,
moderator.
you're welcome.
All right, Patrick, great presentation. Thank you. And we'll probably invite you back for an update on some of the developments of some of these pending cases or matters. Okay, I guess our next presenter is me. Do I have to introduce myself? Do I have to go down to the, yeah, no, please, can I just stay up here? All right, this is a topic we don't get to present on too often because it only comes around every 4 years or so, but we wanted to give you, to be as transparent as possible and invite your participation in the 2023 Sunset Review of the Bureau of Automotive Repair. That's a legislative review. Can we go to the next slide? What is Sunset Review? Sunset Review is an operation, I call it an operational review, but that is the term. Sunset Review is the term the legislature uses to engage in a public review of the Bureau's operations. It's not just the Bureau of Automotive Repair, but all DCA or Department of Consumer Affairs entities must go through a sunset review every 4 years. It's a very comprehensive process. It engages not just the members of the legislature and the members of the two committees that are referenced in the two bullets below, but also DCA, the Bureau of Automotive Repair, all stakeholders, including not just the automotive repair industry, but consumer groups, to look at the Bureau's operations and potentially make recommendations for the improvement of our operations. It is conducted every 4 years, with the exception of this unique situation that we encountered due to the pandemic. The Joint Sunset Review Committees, as it's called, the Joint Sunset Review Committee is actually comprised of 2 separate committees, both on the Assembly and Senate side, the Assembly Business and Professions Committee, and then also the Senate Business Professions and Economic Development Committee. Our last review was completed 5 years ago, so an exception to the 4-year time frame. Again, due to some scheduling issues with other boards and bureaus and their sunset reviews during the pandemic, they had to alter the schedule somewhat for those who were slated to go last year, and we were pushed back to this year. SB 607, a bill that was chaptered in 2021, actually extended the date for our sunset review to this year. Why do they call it sunset? Because we are only authorized for existence in 4-year chunks. We are due to sunset. Please go back. I'll say next slide. Thank you. We are due to sunset on January 1 of 2023 initially, and then that was extended to January 1 of 2024. So 5 years we got this time around. And then assuming we get extended again for another 4-year period, our next sunset will be 4 years forward. I don't think this program will be sunsetted. We just celebrated our 50th anniversary last year of existence, protecting consumers in the automotive repair marketplace. I think we have a really good relationship working with this industry to make sure that we have run a good regulatory program that protects consumers. Obviously, we've got the bad actors that are harming not just consumers, but also the reputation of the industry. And I suspect that we would see something similar from the legislature. They have sunsetted a few programs over the years, mostly programs that are just on a opening, as I want to say, are kind of on a trial basis, see how they'll work. And then at some point, there might be a need to sunset it because it's not, the program isn't necessarily effective, or some other reasons why the program could be sunsetted. But again, it's called that because of the 4-year authorization that allows for a program to be sunsetted. Next slide. Okay, our report was submitted to the 2 committees on January 3rd of this year. We sent out notifications to all of our stakeholders. We also, one of our stakeholders is our own staff. So we sent a notification to our staff as well. That went out, if not on January 3rd, shortly thereafter, within a day or two of the initial submittal. Zach and I personally hand-delivered 8 copies to the 2 committees, 4 copies of each, and then also sent electronic copies to the 2 committees and their staffs. It is posted on the Bureau's website. That communication that I mentioned that went out to all of our staff and all interested parties had a link that can take you straight to the report. The hard copy version, I'll just throw it up here. It looks bigger than it actually, the content. There's 65 pages of narrative, fairly quick read, and then most of the report is supported with appendices on various documents and requirements that are expected for us to turn in to the legislature as part of the submittal of the report. But it's the narrative itself is pretty quick, easy read. Next slide. So I'll quickly go through the sections of the report. The first 10 sections, all pretty standardized, templated requirements given to the programs that are going through sunset review. So we'll be answering the same questions as the other roughly, I think there were 8 total, maybe off 1 or 2 other DCA programs that are going through sunset review this year. They all answer the same questions. We're all asked the same questions. Our answers might be different, obviously, because we're different regulatory programs under the Department of Consumer Affairs. For example, Structural Pest Control Board or what have you might be answering questions differently, but they're asked the same. And it gives an overview, those first 10 sections, of the various programs and operations of the Bureau or the board that's undergoing sunset review. Section 11 deals with prior sunset review issues. Those are issues that were identified by the legislature that we were expected to address. Some of the key issues that came up in that prior sunset review in 2018, certificate blocking. The legislature was concerned about smog check fraud, and we were to address ways to combat that. There was legislation that was chaptered, around that time frame that gave the Bureau authority to block the certificates after performing a smog inspection, block the certificate from going through to the Department of Motor Vehicles if we suspect we had a strong indication that there was fraudulent activity going on, and block that certificate from going through. We've done that. We've been doing that since the statutory authority was provided to us. And so Section 11 of this report gives an update about the efforts to implement that. We also, the legislature was concerned about mobile automotive repair dealers, touching upon a little bit more about what Patrick was talking about with unlicensed activity, and specifically some of the things we were seeing with mobile operations, kind of some underground operations and the advertising that was going on with respect to Craigslist and Angie's List and some of the other forums by which someone might advertise their business. We were expected and did follow up with some regulations to put some requirements in that advertising for mobile ARDs, and not just ensuring that they were registered with us, but putting some advertising requirements in there, such as their ARD registration number. That was the big one that was in that regulation package. Those regulations were adopted in November of 2017, and we're continuing to look at this, and it's an issue that'll be addressed on the next slide, but don't go there just yet. Disciplinary guidelines, that was, we'd spent, I think Mr. Gallo reminds me that we spent 12 years working on a regulation package to update our disciplinary guidelines and get them incorporated by reference into our regulations. Some years back, I think, I don't know how many years that is behind us now, but we did update those regulations in February of 2022, adding laws and regulations training to the guidelines as a feature that a judge can order in a disciplinary order. So that was done not just just very recently, excuse me. And then minor services, that was an issue that was of concern that was raised during our last sunset review. Oil changes, tire changes, battery replacements, and the like were considered since the Bureau's initial days of existence back in the early 70s to be exempted from both registration and regulation by the Bureau of Automotive Repair. That, due to some legislation, AB 3141, which was chaptered in 2018, now that exemption has been removed. And so we have highlighted that in the report as one of the key issues that was addressed. Next slide. Section 12, kind of the big section for us as new issues that we wanted to bring to the attention of the legislature. There are probably other issues that we didn't think of, but might be on other people's and stakeholders' minds that will want to be presented, and certainly want to encourage that. But some of the key ones that we saw on the horizon needing to be addressed are smog check inspections of model year 1976 to 1995 vehicles, pre-OBD2 vehicles, a dwindling number of those vehicles, but still a significant source of contribution to our overall air quality concerns, and part of our state implementation plan that the California Air Resources Board has to submit to the legislature, excuse me, not the legislature, the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. Those older vehicles are still a significant contribution and expectation that we properly get inspections and repairs of those vehicles. Well, we've had a number of concerns from the automotive repair industry, the smog check component of that industry, informing us that it's this equipment which was initially used, that is used to inspect those vehicles and was certified back in the mid-1990s. It's expensive to maintain. Replacement parts are hard to find. It's a lot of issues that and costs that go into performing those inspections. And in some cases, it's very hard for consumers to find a shop that's still maintaining that equipment and using it. So it also becomes a consumer, not protection, but a consumer concern for the Bureau of Automotive Repair. So we've addressed that or highlighted that as a key issue that the legislature might want to address in its response to our current report. Online automotive repair referral businesses, some of which are maybe licensed with us or registered with us as automotive repair dealers, some may not be, but we're seeing some very unique business models that make it very hard for us to regulate, even when they are registered. Trying to find contacts here in California. They might have a business address. When we go by there to go follow up on a consumer complaint, for example, nobody's there. Call this number, and then no one answers the phone. So some very unique business models that are cropping up. You might have heard some of their names. I won't go into them right now, but we have felt that this was a necessary issue that maybe the legislature might want to address. And the topic of today's workshop, though it's not framed this way, dealing with automotive repair transactions and electronic transactions that make it easier for automotive repair dealers and consumers to engage in those transactions. We have heard a concern, and we felt it necessary to represent this to the legislature about shop management software, point-of-sale systems that aren't necessarily written in a way that captures all of the requirements of the Automotive Repair Act and associated regulations. So we felt it necessary to identify this in the Sunset Review Report, and also dedicate a meeting or workshop to this issue, which is the subject of the workshop that will start at 2 o'clock today. And then last is Section 13, which takes up most of the report, the pages of the report. It's all the appendices and data that supports all of the requests of the legislature. And it looks at, it's not just 1 year's worth of data, it's 4, and in this case now 5 years worth of data on our licensing program, our enforcement statistics, and whatever else. There was some questions relating to the response to the pandemic and how we run our operations with telework and things like that. So some new features to the Sunset Review Report this time around. Next slide. Great. Can I just finish?
I think you may have missed storage fees and insurance.
I may have, and I did, sorry. I did, I skipped right over it. Thank you. An issue that we definitely don't want to skip. Keep me honest there, Gene. Automotive repair dealer storage fees and insurer referrals, that's an issue that in the collision repair, auto body repair arena has become front and center to our attention this last year. In January, we set up a dedicated email address to hear from the insurance industry about a growing number of concerns that they had, and felt there wasn't a body to address those issues with automotive repair dealers. Sarah Taylor, who's joining us virtually via WebEx, have brought this issue to my attention. Had some discussions with the automotive repair associations. We are currently working on and engaging in mediating those concerns as they're presented to us, and we felt it was necessary to highlight this in the Sunset Report, because there might be a solution that the legislature wants to take, rather than just having the Bureau kind of ad hoc assembling a referral line as we did. thank you for calling that out. I skipped right over it, as you said. Already covered section 13. Next slide. What's next? Sunset review oversight hearing will occur. This slide says early 2023. We just were informed by one of the committee consultants that the date will be March 14th. So write that down. We'll update this slide. And we'll also send out notifications. But March 14th at 9 a.m. Capitol is undergoing a lot of construction. You may, if you're driving by, see a lot of scaffolding. And so the hearing will actually take place not in the Capitol, but in a building in the Secretary of State's office, or right across the street from it, as I'm told, called the Swing Space Office Building. It's 1021 O Street, room 1100. That's just the information I have as of today. Obviously, if that's updated, we'll inform everyone. We will soon receive from the two committees, the Senate and Assembly Business Professions Committees, a background paper in response to our report that was submitted on January 3rd. There'll be questions and areas that we need to respond to that will allow them to undertake the hearing on March 14th. Maybe some areas of clarification along those lines. That's going to be the responses to that background paper. I'm sure there'll be a deadline for us to meet, and we'll know that very soon once we get the background paper from the committees. Once we do, we'll send out notice of the hearing date that I've mentioned here, or any changes to it, to all of our interested parties, all our stakeholders. There should be no one that's surprised about the date or the location, and we'll post that on the Bureau's website for everyone to see. Legislation usually occurs as part of this process. Sometimes it's very minor, technical cleanup, where there's a incorrect reference in statute to another code section that no one's bothered to clean up or address. Maybe it was an oversight. The drafting of the law wasn't correct or on point, 100% on point. So some technical cleanup that can occur. And then there can also be some very significant policy changes that are enacted as part of this process. We've seen both in prior sunset reviews. So it'll be a matter of what the legislature wants to address in response to the concerns that we've identified, mostly the new issues that I've laid out, as well as any other issues that come to their attention through the various stakeholders and through the public hearing process that'll happen on March 14th. Next slide. I think that's it. Oh. Any questions or comments from the advisory group members? Jack, I'm looking your way first. Jack Maladoff.
Yeah, just a comment. I received a text from Dave Kusa. He said they were having trouble with the WebEx. They couldn't see your presentation, and I let Zach know. I don't know if that's still a problem.
Hi, this is the moderator, and both the co-moderator and myself can see the slides. The recommendation is that if someone cannot see the slides, they might need to log out and log back into the meeting.
Thank you, moderator. Thank you, Jack and Dave, for pointing that out. I don't want to go too much further into our meeting today if that's the case. So we want to.
It might just be me. I've got it online as well, so I'm good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Yeah. Mr. Rice.
Yes. So I think hearing you yesterday and then again today, Pat, I think you're comfortable that the sunset review will be such that that bar will be re-upped again for another 4 years. I will tell you that I've come and testified on behalf of BAR at one of these sessions. I think Jack has done the same thing. I think Gallo has done the same thing. I wouldn't poo-hoo that at all. I think they like to hear from people in terms of what the interaction is with the public and with BAR. I think from our perspective, you need an entity that calls balls and strikes And I think being able to communicate that to them, that you're comfortable with an entity that can do that, I think goes a long way towards a comfort level for them that they want to extend BAR for another session. So I just wanted to say that.
Thank you. Mr. Gallo?
I guess I'm the historian, so going back to 1996 was the first time Cal ABC got involved with the sunset review of BAR. It's why a lot of things happened where we started working together instead of against each other. So I heavily encourage people to participate in the sunset review process. It's when things happen. The legislature needs to understand all the things that we've been able to accomplish working together. And we've gotten a lot done in the last 30 years when we started doing this. So with that, I encourage you to participate.
Thank you. Yeah, I remember the first sunset review that was done, and maybe others, but the one I remember was, I think it kind of put the requirement for the Bureau of Automotive Repair. Maybe there was an exemption of sorts, but the first bureau chief that I remember working for, Marty Keller, kind of volunteered for an operational or sunset review, and from then on it's occurred. It was in the late 1990s, as I recall. So thank you, Marty. And actually, I want to say I really welcome the operational review or sunset review process, because we get so hunkered down in our jobs. Sometimes you need a reminder of some of the things that maybe aren't running as efficiently or smoothly, and to have that other eyes on that to kind of guide you in giving recommendations, or even making changes in statute to that can make us continue the effectiveness of our operations in this modern age where we're so dependent on electronic and an IT world, and some of those resources, and where we can't necessarily get there without maybe some help from the legislature. But for the most part, I think we have. But it does, in my mind, the operational sunset review is a really good thing for all programs. Other comments, questions from the advisory group members? Any WebEx comments? All right, we'll open it up for public comment. Moderator?
Thank you. I'm opening up the Q&A panel. If any member of the public would like to make a comment, please type comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of your screen and send it to all panelists, or you may simply raise your hand. We are displaying instructions and we'll give you a moment. All right, I'm seeing no requests for comment. Shall I close the Q&A panel?
Yes, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
All right, we will move forward with the agenda. What's that? Sorry. All right, our next presentation, Paul Hedgelin with the BAR's Engineering Research Branch. I know Paul has given prior presentations of this and other topics. California Vehicle Inspection System update, CalViz. We like to do periodic updates of various efforts to address smog check enhancements and smog check inappropriate testing behavior, all sorts of things that fall under the CalViz or California Vehicle Inspection System. Paul, welcome.
Morning. Got a couple of updates about the inspection equipment, specifically the BAR OBD inspection system for you today. Talk about the biometric project and also the effort to move on to supported Windows operating systems on the computers used in those systems. We can go ahead and go to the first slide. We're working on the biometric rollout right now. We're looking at a early May mandatory use date. So what that means is every smog check inspection performed on the bar OIS system will require use of a biometric device in May. We'll send a 30-day notice out as required by regulation before that date, so industry will know exactly what day we're going to set that mandate. And when mandatory, all the inspectors will be required to use the scanner at the beginning and end of every inspection. Okay, next slide, please. So enrollment status. So the first step in using the biometric is visiting a local bar field office, showing your identification and allowing bar to collect those initial palm scans. We call that the enrollment process. So as of January 6th, we had almost 7,300 inspectors enrolled out of about 8,500 actively working inspectors. As of yesterday, that number is up to about 7,500. So the majority of inspectors have already enrolled and are ready for biometric use. And that enrollment activity is either at a bar field office or at some other bar designated locations, some remote locations for ease of access. And those are all on our website. Next slide, please. So after you get enrolled, the next step is to buy the equipment. On our website is a listing of 4 resellers. You can contact them, buy the equipment, and depending on the reseller, it might be a few days, or they may have a larger rollout effort and may take a few weeks to get the equipment. So we're encouraging everyone to get the equipment now, as soon as possible, get those orders in, because it may take a varying amount of time to get the equipment in the station. The biometric kit, it includes the sensor, a hand guide to position your hand over the sensor, and a cable just to plug it into the computer. Okay, next slide. Our public website also has a nice biometric web page. The address is listed on the slide here. It contains a whole variety of information about biometric use. There's the online appointment scheduler where you can go in, pick a time, a date, location to enroll at a bar field office or other location. There's the reseller information I just showed to buy the equipment, links to our new smog check manual that require biometric use. Also links to take you over to the bar's regulation page to see the smog check equipment security and fraud prevention regulations, and also frequently asked questions. So good resources there. An update on the software. So the bar OIS system needs a software update before stations can begin using the biometric equipment. So just this morning, we deployed the software to beta stations. So we're watching that. We've got a number of stations already using the biometric equipment, so that's exciting. After a beta period, in February, we'll open up that software to all the rest of the stations, and that'll be an optional download period, meaning they can choose to download the software when it's convenient for them to download the software. So that'll go for about a 2-week period. And then in March, that software will become mandatory. So eventually the stations will be forced to download the software. So even though whether they have the software or not, they still have the choice to use biometric. It's still optional until May. Usage of it. Other changes that already came out just ahead of the biometric software, we went from an 8 to a 15-character password. Now it's required by state standards. So we have to do that at bar as well. And this is, go ahead and go to the next slide there. This is the screen showing the new password, longer length password requirements. Okay, next slide. Also, the terms and conditions screen was updated. It's much longer now. It includes the notice on collection of personal biometric information and its use, and it also includes the biometric data collection consent. So those are 2 documents that are presented to the inspectors when they roll at a bar field office. They're now on the screen every time they log in to use the bar OIS system. Okay, next slide. And this is just a screenshot of the longer terms and conditions screen. You've got the notice on top, the consent in the middle, and then the existing terms and conditions at the bottom of that screen. So they just have to scroll down and to read that, and then press continue at the bottom of the screen. All right, next slide. So biometric scanning. So the screen on the left shows what it looks like when they're going to scan their palm. It says waiting for palm scan. And then there's also another screen that appears that helps them. It's a guide to place your hand over the sensor. There's also a hand guide that helps position your hand. So that's about the only change you'll see to the software when using the biometric scanner. Okay, next slide. So we're going to change gears a little bit and talk about supported operating systems. So for a whole variety of reasons, BarOS computers that are running on unsupported operating systems, they don't have the latest Microsoft Windows updates, and that causes a whole variety of issues. They're at risk of malware, possibly stolen data. You might risk downtime from the business if the system doesn't work. And it won't work with future BarOS software updates. As we modernize our code, we need to have the appropriate Windows version in there to run it. So for all these reasons, we're starting we're working, call it a new project or new effort, to have all these systems on a supported operating system by July 1st this year. And Windows updates must also be turned on so that the automatic updates continue to keep the system in sync. Okay, next slide. This is just a visual showing Windows 7 and Windows 8 are out of support. Just a week ago, January 10th, Windows 8.1 went out of support. So what this means is all the BarOS systems have to use a Windows 10 or 11 operating system. Okay, next slide. Transition. So to minimize the impact of stations, the previous software release, the 22.3 Chromium release, and this current biometric software release, we work with stations to get their computers in a good enough shape to run those software releases to minimize impact as we march toward the Windows 10 and 11. Excuse me. So the 22.3 software update, it's a Chromium software, meaning it was updates to work on the modern internet browsers. So Internet Explorer, for example, is no longer supported by Microsoft. They moved to Microsoft Edge, those kinds of things. So that's the reason for that software update. The current biometric software, it needs a minimum set of Microsoft Windows files to run that hardware. And then future software, it's going to go to a more modern .NET 6 code base. Again, meaning you have to have supported operating system to run that. And then even lastly, the DAD 2.0 device, when that gets certified and mandated for use in stations in the future, it also needs to work with a supported operating system. So these are the reasons and the steps we're taking into this transition. Go to the next slide. So for the 22.3 software update, we notified the stations that could have that were impacted via weekly bar blast, saying, hey, you need to get your systems updated before the software release, or you will no longer be able to use your system. Also, the DAD vendors reached out to lots of these customers and helped them transition to a software update or a new computer. And then lastly, any of the non-responsive stations, we had our bar industry help desk call them and give them one last reminder, you need to get this updated. So next slide. So we did the same thing for the current biometric software release. Weekly blasts, DAD vendors reached out, and lastly, the bar industry help desk gave them one final warning. Okay, so this slide is there's a new pop-up warning message. So anytime the BarOS software is installed or the application is opened and run, this pop-up message appears. And if they have an old unsupported operating system, it tells them that. So with this new biometric software release, it'll say Windows 7, Windows 8, and Windows 8.1 are out of support. So just a heads up that you need to get onto a Windows 10 or 11. So these are some counts of what we're dealing with here. These were earlier in the month. They've gone down as the vendors are working with the stations, and the stations are even buying their own computers. We had about 1,000 Windows 7 computers that needed to be updated or replaced, about 58 Windows 8, and the lion's share here is about 3,500 Windows 8.1 computers. So they'll all have to move to Windows 10 and 11. Again, make sure your Windows updates are turned on, and we have to get this done by July 1st. Enough about Windows. We've got one last slide here for Vehicle Safety Systems Inspection Update. Per Assembly Bill 471, BAR is required to implement a safety system inspection program for salvage titled vehicles. It will consolidate the existing brake and lamp programs alongside a safety inspection. The proposed regulations and inspection manual are going through internal review. The BAR Safety Inspection System, or BAR SIS software, is in development right now. So we're preparing to start testing that software as it comes to us. And the DCA licensing system changes are in progress. A lot of that was completed just a few days ago. They'll support the new license types for a safety station license and a safety inspector license, all moving toward the goal of starting January 2024. I think that takes me to my last slide for questions.
Thank you, Paul. I always appreciate you coming in and giving us an update on the progress of these projects. Questions from advisory group members or comments? Mr. Gallo.
Actually, just a quick comment, because Nikki's not here today, so I want to thank you on her behalf for how quickly you responded to setting up alternate locations for technician certification on the units. In some cases, some of her members were having to drive 2.5 hours to get to a field office. And with you guys responding and setting up alternate locations with DMV and other locations, it really helped her members a lot. So I just want to thank you on her behalf.
I have to thank our field offices for that effort.
Yeah, it was a good comment from Nikki to make sure that we had the biometric enrollment, not just at locations that made sense to us at our field offices, but other remote locations where technicians could easily access. So we responded to that as best we could. I didn't hear any problems with some of the alternate sites or any issues there. Mr. Rice.
So I was just comforted from Pat, who said that they will be moving from a 15-digit one to a 20-digit. So that will give you more. No? No? That's not what you said? Okay, I'm sorry. I'm sorry about that. 15 digits. Okay, all right. Second thing is, I think I got an alert from Microsoft saying that Windows 10 is now getting close to being phased out before too awful long. So I just wanted to make that comment. But our locations have actually just bit the bullet and got new equipment because our stuff was so old. But I will tell you that my guys went down to the local bar office, did the palm scan, 10 minutes or so. It was very seamless. So compliments on how all that went.
Good, thank you.
Yeah, the 15-digit password, I've been doing that for some time as a state employee, and it was really awkward at first, but I'd gotten used to it, so all for protection of our data and information and personal identifiable information, perhaps. Let's see, questions to the far left. Yes, Jeff.
Thank you. What happens if the shop doesn't have the biometric in place by May, or they don't have the software updates? What happens if they don't comply?
It's a replacement for the password. So if you can't enter your password, you can't do the inspection. So it's the same thing. They just can't do inspections.
Okay.
Yeah.
Other questions from the bar advisory group here in person? How about bar advisory group members? Bar advisory group members first, who are on the WebEx. Well, okay. Okay, how about public comment? We've got, I haven't been calling this out as clearly as I probably should have, in the room here, but also via WebEx. Anyone in the room here? Yes, Mr. Lopez. Good morning, Gene.
Morning. Thank you for your presentation. As the inspection relates to salvage titled vehicles, the National Auto Body Council has donated over 3,000 vehicles, and those are often salvage titled vehicles. Now, those 3,000, California is only a portion of those 3,000, but hundreds of cars have been donated. And so the concern is, to what extent will the inspection be for these salvage titled vehicles? How far beyond brake and lamp inspection will this inspection incur?
I guess we could say it's a visual inspection, basically, of the safety systems in the vehicle. You know, does it have seat belts? Are the seats mounted? You know, it's as opposed to an electronic plug-in data collection, safety inspection.
Yeah, because with vehicles manufactured after 2015 oftentimes have the ADAS systems on there. And so inspection, I believe, inspection should extend to the ADAS systems if the vehicle, in fact, has them. And in order to do that, oftentimes vehicle manufacturers require wheel alignment prior to the ADAS inspection or calibration. Mm-hmm. So is that something that's going to be added to these safety inspections?
I don't remember the exact dates of the workshops that we had, but I think we've laid out some of the components of the inspection that we were contemplating and are currently being reviewed by our legal team as part of the drafting of those regulations. ADAS, we're going to collect data, pull that data from the OBD system, but ADAS won't be a feature on day one of this program. It's just, I think it's too much for us to take on in the first phase. But the good news about the legislation that authorized this is it allowed for growth or expansion of the program based on the vehicle technology and the needs to protect consumers with a more thorough or comprehensive inspection. But ADAS won't be there on day one if we're trying to meet a deadline of January 1. It's just too much information that we're still not aware of and need to collect before we actually mandate. I do not know where we landed, but we'll give a presentation in April about, what was the other one you said? Another component that you were asking for, a wheel alignment, if that's a feature of it. I do not believe it made the final cut, but I'm not saying that it didn't for sure. And I'd rather just present this in April with a more detailed explanation of all the components of the regulatory package. But we're kind of waiting for, before we unveil that package in its entirety, we're kind of waiting for some comments back on the direction and proposal that we've submitted to our legal team.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Other comments, public comments, either in person or via WebEx moderator? You can open it up for the public comments on the WebEx.
Thank you. I've opened up the Q&A panel. If any member of the public would like to comment on agenda item 6, you may type comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of your screen and submit it to all panelists, or simply raise your hand. We are displaying instructions and we'll give you a moment. All right, I see no request for comment. Shall I close the Q&A panel?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
All right, Paul. Good job. Good presentation. We'll see you back here. I think you come back every other meeting for...
Keep bringing me back.
Yeah, we do.
It's hard to follow two Patricks, but...
Thank you. All right. At our last advisory group meeting in October, and we've had a couple now, case studies based on consumer complaints that we wanted to, in the spirit of being as transparent as possible about our operations, share those experiences and outcomes without divulging too much that might be in the camp of kind of confidential information. But we've shared, I think we had a smog check complaint. We also had one on maybe it was more mechanical in nature, a repair. And this will be the third. I said, at the last meeting, I said, let's do one on collision repair or auto body. And I was pleasantly surprised that we were able to come up with one and develop a presentation for our next meeting or today's meeting. So thank you very much to the enforcement team for responding to that, because I think it would be good to see as many different areas of the automotive repair field kind of represented in these kind of case studies that we're trying to periodically do. So I welcome both Michael Colazzi and Jeffrey Locke. Michael to my left, or on the far right if you're in the audience, and Jeffrey Locke, both of whom are field representatives or program representatives in the Sacramento field office. So welcome, and thank you for responding to the interest of giving a presentation in this area. So welcome.
Good morning, and thank you for that introduction. Today we are presenting the following complaint mediation case study. Let's begin. Next slide. This case study will highlight an auto body repair complaint. BAR receives complaints from consumers regarding difficulties encountered with auto body and collision repairs. Complaints range from dissatisfaction with minor cosmetic repairs to concerns with major collision repairs. Some complaints involve vehicle restoration and custom fabrication facilities. Many collision repairs require that facilities follow specific manufacturer repair procedures for air conditioning, windshields, and structural repairs. Next slide. In the case study being presented, BAR will address the following: consumer allegations, vehicle inspection, consumer complaint, vehicle reinspection, complaint resolution, compliance, and education. Next slide. Consumer allegations. BAR received a request for an auto body inspection filed by a consumer on the Bureau's public website at www.bar.ca.gov. The auto body inspection program provides consumers with an option for a no-cost inspection of auto body or collision repairs. In the case study, the consumer suspected that the vehicle was not repaired to pre-accident condition because of visible workmanship concerns. The consumer's vehicle was a 2016 Chevrolet Camaro. Next slide. Auto body inspection. BAR compared the repairs performed to the subject facility invoice provided by the consumer. The inspection found uneven body gaps between the trunk lid and quarter panels. The trunk lid was difficult to close and positioned higher than both quarter panels when latched. The tail lamps were uneven and obstructing closure of the trunk lid. The rear body panel was replaced, but exposed bare metal was left behind on the underside of the panel. BAR advised the consumer of these findings and took photographs of the deficiencies. Next slide. This photograph shows the left side of the trunk lid resting higher than the quarter panel when latched. As you can see in the photograph, the gap between the left quarter panel and trunk lid is uneven and narrower than would be expected. Next slide. This photograph shows the right side of the trunk lid resting higher than the quarter panel when latched. As you can see in the photo, the gap between the trunk lid and right quarter panel is uneven and wider than would be expected. Next slide. This photograph shows the left tail lamp assembly and trunk lid with substandard body gaps. As you can see in the photograph, the gap surrounding the tail lamp is narrower than would be expected and the corner is touching the trunk lid. Next slide. This photograph shows the right tail lamp assembly and trunk lid with substandard body gaps. As you can see in the photograph, the gap surrounding the tail lamp is wider than would be expected, and the inside edge is almost touching the trunk lid. So far, these were visible workmanship concerns that the consumer could see. Next slide. This photograph shows the backside of the lower left rear body panel with witness marks of exposed bare metal welds. The exposed welds can be seen across the top of the photograph. The photograph was taken underneath the vehicle. Next slide. This photograph shows the backside of the lower right rear body panel with witness marks of exposed bare metal welds. Again, the exposed welds can be seen across the top of the photograph. At this point, these were workmanship concerns that the consumer could not see, but BAR found through inspection. Next slide. Consumer complaint. As a result of BAR's findings during the auto body inspection, the consumer chose to file a complaint against the subject facility. BAR made a field visit at the subject facility to discuss the complaint and was provided with records for the consumer's repairs to verify the findings. The facility was informed about the consumer's allegations and BAR's inspection. As a result, the facility requested that the consumer return the vehicle so the rear body panel installation could be re-inspected. At this point, I will pass the presentation to Jeff.
Thank you, Michael. Good morning, everybody. The next portion of this case study will start at the vehicle reinspection. The consumer agreed to the reinspection at the facility location. The customer authorized the facility to remove the rear bumper cover, reinforcement bar, and tail lamps. BAR found that the rear body panel was not welded or weld bonded to the right and left rear frame rail ends as required by the vehicle manufacturer's published installation procedure. The same procedure described the application of anti-corrosion materials to welded or weld bonded areas, and three-dimensional measuring equipment is required to examine the new rear body panel during installation. Next slide, please. The facility acknowledged that three-dimensional measuring equipment was not used to verify that the measuring points for the rear frame rails and body panel were within manufacturer specifications. BAR reviewed these installation procedures with the facility and took photographs of the ongoing deficiencies. Next slide. Next slide again. There you go. This photograph shows the rear section of the vehicle inspected with rear components removed. As you can see in the photograph, the rear bumper reinforcement, and the taillights have been removed. Next slide. This photograph shows a business card fitting between a mating section of the rear body panel and left frame rail end, which requires welding or weld bond. The business card was to demonstrate to the repair facility that the rear body panel was not welded or weld bonded to the left frame rail. Next slide. This photograph shows a business card fitting between the mating section of the rear body panel and right frame rail end, which requires welding or weld bond. Again, this business card was to demonstrate to the repair facility that the rear body panel was not welded or weld bonded to the right frame rail. Next slide, please. The next three slides show the manufacturer's replacement procedures when replacing the rear body panel on a 2016 Chevy Camaro. The highlighted sections were reviewed with the repair facility related to the deficiencies found during the auto body inspection and reinspection. We'll start with the removal procedure. Under number 4, the highlighted section states, record the number and location of welds for installation of the service assembly. I'll add number 5, remove all the necessary factory welds. Simply put, when removing the necessary factory spot welds, the repair facility is required to replace the factory welds removed. Next slide. Now we're on to the installation procedure for the rear body panel. Number 2, apply weld-through coating or panel bonding adhesive to all mating surfaces. So at this point, the repair facility had the option to weld or weld bond the new rear body panel. Referring back to the photographs with exposed bare metal, the facility chose to weld the panel. Number 3, position the rear end panel to the vehicle. Use 3-dimensional measuring equipment to inspect the panel. The repair facility already acknowledged that they did not verify measuring points. This failure to measure likely contributed to the uneven body gaps found during the auto body inspection. Next slide, please. Number 4 states, weld or weld bond accordingly at the original weld locations. The reinspection confirmed that the repair facility did not replace the factory welds at the right and left rear frame rail locations. Number 6 states, apply the sealers and anti-corrosion materials to the repair area as necessary. The auto body inspection confirmed that the repair facility left behind exposed bare metal on the underside of the vehicle when replacing the rear body panel. I would like to conclude this portion of the presentation by emphasizing the importance that repair facilities follow specific manufacturer repair procedures when performing auto body and collision repairs. I will turn the present back to Michael, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Jeff. Complaint resolution. As a result of BAR's investigation, the facility offered to perform corrective repairs at no cost to the consumer, totaling $3,484.73. These repairs included measuring the frame and installing another rear body panel to correct the uneven body gaps, misaligned trunk lid, and tail lamps. The facility also offered to provide the consumer a rental car during the corrective repair process. The consumer accepted these offers to mediate the complaint. Next slide. Compliance and education. BAR discussed specific laws and regulations regarding accepted trade standards for good and workmanlike repairs with the subject facility, including that repair procedures be performed and corrosion protection be applied in accordance with manufacturer's specifications. The facility was provided with a link to the latest laws and regulations on BAR's website and provided a copy of the Right It Right booklet, along with a speaker request form offering further education through an in-person Right It Right presentation. Next slide. This concludes the case study, so we will open to question and comments, and thank you once again.
Thank you, Michael and Jeffrey. I really appreciate your being here and doing this type of review. I know sometimes it can be a little uncomfortable. First presentation, great job, and obviously kind of opening up our operations for all to see. I think you know, that's maybe new to some at the Bureau, but I believe it's good and it's healthy for us to do so. I want to get input and comments on these operations or these case studies, and so that's why we've brought them forward to the Bureau of Automotive Repairs Advisory Group. So thank you and appreciate your doing that. We'll open it up for questions and comments from the advisory group. Oh, Bud,
Okay, thank
please,
you.
Mr. Rice.
Okay. when I see something like this, I think it's sad, to be quite honest with you. You know, I mean, you always have to start with, does the customer have a point? Yeah. Yeah, this customer had a point, okay? I'm curious as to what the work order looked like. The work order of the work that was performed and then presented back to the customer. Did it have the line items that said that they did these repairs on that vehicle? Do you guys know that?
So just to clarify, are you talking the initial repairs or the rework?
The initial
rework?
Yes.
It's my understanding that there was a invoice for the work.
Okay, and each of these things that you pointed out that they had to redo, they had on the original invoices that they had performed this work for this customer on that date.
It was a solid.
They were paid to replace the rear body panel, of course.
Okay.
And to set up and measure.
Okay. And then the customer takes delivery of this vehicle, and this looks like this. Okay, then when they come back, they get a chance to relook at the vehicle. They see the disconnects of where they should have, the work they should have done, the quality of the work they should have done, and what the vehicle looks like now, and then agreed to redo basically what they should have done on the original invoice on day one.
And if you look at the repair procedure, it's 3 pages. I mean, it's probably one of the most simplest repair procedures you're going to come across in auto body and collision repairs.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Indeed.
Yeah, those items were, after initial observations from the consumer, obviously there was assistance through our auto body inspection program, providing additional insight into not just what the consumer saw, but you saw some of the photos underneath the vehicle that wasn't necessarily readily apparent or visible to the consumer without further inspection through our auto body inspection program. And then at that point, the consumer filed a complaint with us. Yeah, Jack, come on with us.
Thank you for the presentation. I have a few questions. I'm curious about the shop itself, not the name, but during your investigation, were you able to determine whether they had the right equipment? Because I know there's some minimum standards with the BR regulations, and you mentioned they didn't have the 3-dimensional measuring equipment, but did you determine whether they had the appropriate equipment to conduct these repairs?
Answer that or me? So in order for them to do a corrective repair, they agreed to remeasure it, so that tells you right there that they had the measuring equipment.
Okay. So based on your investigation, they had the equipment. What about in terms of manuals or information about OEM specifications? Did they even have this information to even properly conduct the repair?
In these type of situations, we educate them on how to access those documents. I mean, you can literally go on Google right now and type in a 2016 Chevy Camaro and print out rear body procedures when you replace it.
Yeah.
But we tell them, all data CCC1 estimating systems, they now offer repair procedures for those estimating systems. So they have so many different avenues. iCar, they can call the parts vendor and actually get a copy when they order the rear body panel.
Yeah, and that's interesting about iCar. Yeah, were you during the investigation? Were you able to determine whether the technicians were trained by iCar? That they had training? Were you able to determine this during the investigation?
I don't think that's really for us to comment on.
I don't think that was part of the review. Yeah,
I was just curious because after this, you kind of wonder whether they're going to continue doing this, right? I mean, it sounds like there's some issues here with workmanship, and I don't know whether it's just incompetence or they just don't have, proper training or manuals. Just trying to figure out. Just curious as to how this happened. Okay, thank you.
Okay, Matthew.
The typical process, and maybe specifically in this case, so did the consumer go back to the body shop first and say, hey, this is screwed up, will you guys fix it? Or did they directly come to the, file a complaint with the Bureau to get guidance?
Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. And then a lot of times they will go back and it doesn't still get resolved, their issue, and then that's when they do decide to file a bar complaint.
Okay.
In this case, they had asked for the no-cost inspection of the repairs that were performed, probably based on their own observations that something didn't look right.
Yeah, makes sense.
And somehow found out about our program. I mean, we do as much outreach about that program, but I can't remember what the number of participants are per year, but it's dropped over the years. We're trying to certainly heighten awareness about that.
Thank you.
Yes, Jeff Cox.
That was my exact same question, so thanks, Matt.
Yeah, I'm not sure if we know whether in this particular case, whether the consumer went back to the repair facility or just happened to hear about the Bureau and knew to ask for the inspection of the vehicle. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, Mr. Robinette with ICAR.
With ICAR, yes, thank you. Just a quick question for clarification. Did it seem that they were just unaware and not educated? Or was this a quality control breach?
Permission to speak freely.
We're just presenting this case study.
Sure.
So,
yeah,
I mean.
Well, it just feeds into the conversation of how to mitigate further in additional situations like this. We certainly have quality control issues across the board in every aspect, in every industry.
I will tell you this, a lot of times in these situations, the technician's no longer there.
Yeah.
Because it's a domino effect of them finally realizing that they kind of have a bad apple.
They may have known, just didn't follow protocol.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Jeff. Other questions, comments from the advisory group? We look at advisory group members on WebEx as well. Any questions or comments? Okay, let's open it up. We can circle back if there's something that you think of from the advisory group, but let's open it up for public comment, both in person. Yes, Pete Bezick. Can you come? Pete, we're being recorded, so I need you to come to the mic. We'll make room for you.
You can stay here.
Pete Bezick with the California Auto Body Association. Welcome, Pete.
Jeff, Mike, good presentation, very informative.
Thank you.
I just have, it's actually an A and B question. Number one, was this vehicle repaired under an insurance contract? And B, do you know if this was a DRP type repair?
Reviewing the complaint report, it was insurance repairs, and I can't tell you if they were a direct repair or not.
But highly unlikely, based on just the complaint report, yeah.
You think so?
But definitely insurance repair.
Okay, Mike.
Mike, do you want to just reiterate that? And it was off mic, and I'd like everybody to have the advantage of hearing the response to Pete's question. I'll just summarize because it wasn't coming out. I don't know if the mic was off or on that he was speaking into. He asked if it was insurer repair and whether it was a DRP or direct repair program participant. So what was the...
And Jeff had made a good point that I wanted to expand on. We are simply presenting this this particular case study, but obviously we have some knowledge of the complaint, and this was an insurance repair. Whether or not it was a DRP was highly unlikely. Was simply what I stated. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Rice.
Yeah, I think one of the issues I think you're trying to kind of bring up is I think in some cases an insurance repair, you want to repair it to a 10, but the insurance company will only get you to an 8, and you have to do it what the insurance company says, and you're a little bit unhappy with what you get or what you're able to do, but you got to repair it to the 8. But this isn't even close to that. So I think
one thing with direct repairs too, if it's a customer contacts the insurance company, a lot of times if they're on the program, they'll tell them to go back in and they'll hold that shop accountable. Mm-hmm. So that probably kind of tells you where this one was at.
Yeah, good point. Can we open it up for public comment via WebEx?
Thank you. I've opened up the Q&A panel. If any member of the public would like to make a comment, please type comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of your screen and send it to all panelists, or you may simply raise your hand. We are displaying instructions and we'll give you a moment. All right, I see no requests for comment. Shall I close the Q&A panel?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Oh, okay.
Any other comments from the public who are attending in person? Any other follow-up, additional thoughts, advisory group members? All right, doesn't look like it. Michael and Jeffrey, thank you so much for doing this. I love these presentations. I don't know about everybody else, but they're really eye-opening as to some of the things we see. I'm not saying the results, although the results, if you're in the shoes of the consumer, actually turned out pretty good. But and hopefully for the repair shop, hopefully they turn around on that one. That's very important. Agenda. Next agenda item is an enforcement licensing modernization update. We've been talking ELM with this group periodically over the last 2 to 3 years. Clay Leak from our executive office here to give a latest and greatest update, plus a demonstration, a demo. Oh, Patrick Galuppi is joining in as well for I believe the demo portion of the presentation. Welcome.
Morning. Sorry, I'm having trouble with this chair here. There we go. Thanks for the introduction. Happy to be here today to give you guys an update on our enforcement and licensing modernization project. Next slide, please. So just really quick in terms of background, the BREEZE project had a goal of consolidating all Department of Consumer Affairs regulatory entities onto a single system. That project, Release 3, was canceled in January of 2015, which left 18 regulatory entities underneath the DCA umbrella to kind of modernize on a different path. There are several of us still in the process of modernizing, and that includes BAR. Next slide, please. So one of our big goals coming into this project was to leverage the success of some other entities, regulatory entities under the DCA umbrella that modernized under a project called Business Modernization Cohort 1. There was a pretty substantial investment made in an enterprise software license agreement, and there were some procurements that made environments available. And by an environment, I mean a production, a dev, test, environments needed to produce, develop code, and push code through the process to production. We moved forward with an approach to obtain some implementation services for a product called InLumon through the DGS Software Licensing Program, or SLP. The scope of our project was very focused on a minimally viable product, or an MVP, focused on licensing and externally facing capabilities, meaning the ability to apply for initial licensure online, the ability to renew the license online, the ability to provide whatever associated documentation online, et cetera. The project had a 1-year duration. We are currently scheduled as well for about 18 months of maintenance and operations support from the vendor. Next slide, please. So with the background out of the way, where we're at today, the project was approved on April 25th of 2022. The contract was awarded to Encore Consulting, LLC, with a subcontractor of InLumon. The project kickoff was conducted on May 4th and included business representatives from Business and Consumer Services Housing Agency, Department of Consumer Affairs, BAR, and all the associated vendor staff. The project team's been working really hard. Daily meetings, a lot of project execution activities, what we call daily Scrum meetings, where the developers meet with our subject matter experts, which includes Patrick here, who's going to help us with the demonstration, as well as a bunch of licensing and enforcement staff that have expertise in different pieces of the application and kind of can shine that light on that piece they're most familiar with and help direct the vendor on how best to do that and move that functionality onto a digital platform. Lots of management meetings. Obviously, we have a lot of stakeholders like the Department of Consumer Affairs, Department of Technology that are interested in our progress and how the project's going. We have 10 sprints planned. We are currently in the process of sprint 7, so we are approaching the finish line. We have a go-live date tentatively planned for April 28th. I can tell you we are pushing up against that, and we have some scope considerations that I think I have on the next slide right here to kind of talk through. Yeah, challenges. We've had some staff turnover through the project that's been challenging. Another challenge we've hit is some unanticipated complexity. We're very familiar with licenses and how things are structured under the Bureau of Automotive Repair, but other boards and bureaus do things very differently, and we're not always aware of that. So I think we made some assumptions around similarities between us and other regulatory entities, and I think we're finding as we go through this process, we are a snowflake in some ways. We're not apples to apples with a lot of other regulatory entities under the DCA umbrella. Another complexity that has come to light, many are aware that some STAR regulations were adopted on July 1st of this year, so that very much changed the way that program kind of operates. And obviously that change occurred right in the middle of our project. So we had to revisit some of those requirements, and actually we made the decision to descope STAR from this first phase and push it to the second phase because of some of the complexity and just the kind of need to kind of figure out how we were going to manage some of these changes before we started to digitize that process. And lastly, this strategy is really reliant on kind of a handoff between this new system, the Connect system, the Inlumon system I mentioned, and interoperability down to the existing system of record, which is the Consumer Affairs System, or CAS. So as we worked through this process, there's definitely been some complexities around getting these systems to work in sync and continuing to provide other DCA systems like DCA License Search, the DCA Open Data Portal, internal bar applications with the data that they need to continue working. So a lot of moving parts, but the team's done a really good job moving forward and overcoming some of these challenges as we've gone through the process. Next slide, please. That brings us to an online demonstration, which Patrick's going to do, I guess, in closing. I just want to thank everybody that's been involved on the bar side, Patrick staff, licensing staff. They've really put a ton of energy and effort into this process. They've really brought their A game. The vendor's done a great job, and the team's really come together, and I'm really proud of what we've put together, and we'll be rolling out soon. So with that said, I'll turn it over to Patrick, who has been a really key piece of the team, and again, one of those players that's really stepped up for us on this effort.
All right, thank you. So as I mentioned earlier, I was going to be pinch hitting for this one, so hopefully I don't fumble through it too much, but I am familiar with what we're working on, so I think we'll get through it. And also for expediency of this demo and get everyone out to lunch, we're not going to go through the entire process step by step. We're going to fill in a couple screenshots here to get us through. Hopefully by now everyone here in person or tuned in has done this in some form or fashion, setting up an account, whether it's on an app, online application. So I think the step-by-step's not necessary. But what we're looking at here is initial account registration and login. Once this goes live, there's going to be a link accessed through our public website in which a first-time individual seeking to set up registration would go to, click on a link, and they're going to log in for the first time by click here to register. After clicking on register, just as like I said, most are familiar, you're going to fill out some personal information, name, email address, date of birth, last four social, etc. You're going to submit your registration. Upon submitting of the registration, one thing, and there's no need to go back, but there was also a checkbox. There's also preferred method of communication, allowing for text messages, email, etc. Upon hitting the registration button or the submit, you'll get a successful a screen showing that you successfully have registered, followed by a subsequent email correspondence giving you a temporary password. Here's a screenshot of that email that you would receive. You would use this temporary password to then return to the site and log in for the first time. By clicking here to log in, you'll enter your username, which is your email address, followed by the temporary password, hit login. The system will then prompt you to set your password initially that first time. So once you're setting in your password, and you hit change password, again, you're going to get the successful completion email sent to you, and then you're able to log into the system. So with that said, we're now going to transition to the live demo, where we're going to log into the system here. As you can notice, this would be the home page. Upon logging in, it's going to navigate to the dashboard here. So this is the dashboard. And just to start, the first time we've preloaded some applications in here, just again for the purpose of this demo. But this would be a blank screen. You wouldn't have anything initially. But if you notice on the top right-hand corner, the green link there says Link License. So for existing registrants or licensees, your first time logging in, you can click on this. It's going to guide you through a process to link any existing licenses and bring them to this dashboard. For the purpose of today's demo, we're going to go through an initial ARD application, and I'm going to try to focus on some of the high-level changes that that have come about aside from the paper application that everyone is so used to already. So right here under the application, if you had pendings, one of the nice features with this online application is you can start filling out an application, and at any time you can save it, holds it on the dashboard. You can come back and start filling it out later so you don't lose your progress. So what we just did here is we clicked on resume an existing application that was in process of filling out. If you notice on the left-hand side, sections that have already been populated have those green checks. At the very bottom, you see one that's still a black circle with an X. Those are tabs that have not been completed.
So real quick, I'm just going to jump in. One of the huge benefits of doing this online versus paper is obviously we're able to validate the data that you're providing is good. So you're not submitting a bad application, which then we spend a bunch of time reviewing and then send you back a letter saying your application's deficient, and then you try to fix it and you send it back, right? It's weeks every cycle of passing paper back and forth. What this electronic form allows us to do is a bunch of front-end validation, make sure that data is good so we can process the application quicker. Back to, John, your question about getting people licensed quicker. Well, the quicker we do these, the more staff are available to pick up what's next in the queue. So the whole process, everything moves faster, right? This isn't just a convenience for licensees. This is a huge efficiency for us in the back end as well.
I was going to touch on some of that as well, but so the instruction, I'll just kind of briefly go through each tab quickly. There's instructions to the applicant on what's necessary of them based on the ownership structure, et cetera. There's a series of, it's similar to the paper application. It's been transferred. It's been updated to reflect what's required of the online application, right? We've updated the language to be accurate to this new process. The next tab being the general information tab. This is what I was going to kind of touch on. The general information tab is specific to the business, where you'll fill in address, the business name, all information relevant to the business. And this is where we're going to start talking about some of the validation. As Clay was mentioning, one of the biggest delays is deficiencies and correcting deficiencies. Because we're building in a lot of business logic on the front end to validate the data that's being entered into the application. For example, missing information, not providing something that's required. The system is not going to allow you to move on to the next tab or complete that tab until you provided all the necessary information. Now, the accurateness of the data may still result in deficiencies. We can never eliminate it 100%, but we can get it as close to perfect as possible so the processor is looking at the complete application and hopefully issuing a license as quick as possible. So clicking onto the next tab, ownership information, again with business logic. Depending on the ownership structure in which you're applying, whether it's a sole proprietor, a corporation, partnership, again, that business logic is going to drive the applicant to provide the necessary information to complete that application. In this instance, we are doing a sole proprietor, so it is a completed tab because on the first ribbon there, we have a singular owner listed, which is the only thing allowed for a single sole proprietor. Had it been a partnership, there'd have to be two or more, and so on, based on the ownership structure requirements. In this particular one, we've also entered responsible managing employee, RME, which is an opportunity here for the applicant to insert that individual's information as well. Going on to the next tab, type of business. This is one that we're now changing. I think this is one that will drive some interest with the current paper application, the limitations of CAS, and even our auto shop locator tool. You can currently only click on two specific types of repairs that you're performing or business types. With this new system, as you can see, she's clicking on a few boxes here. You're not limited to the two. You can click on as many as are applicable to your business, and those will also post to the auto shop locator. So this is kind of a neat feature that we've expanded on to allow registrants to properly display and advertise the types of services that they're performing.
And one more quick point on that. So obviously this is an initial application, but you'll have access to be able to update that data at any point. So if you choose to stop offering a specific service, you would obviously want to log into your portal and unselect that business type. So consumers aren't calling you looking for a trailer hitch repair or a motorcycle repair or whatever service in question was removed from your list.
So just going to the next tab, additional permits. This is something that was coming up earlier in one of the questions. You know, do I have all the permits? And it may not have been 100% where you're going with the question, but this is where you could put in spray booth permits, your resale permit, et cetera, the ones that are applicable. But as you can even see on the application, you're either going to provide a number or you're going to select NA. It's not applicable, or you may be exempt from it. It's going to allow you to move on and go to the next. Background information. There are a series of questions with every application in which we ask questions. A series of yes or no questions. Again, the business logic and the types of responses are going to drive the applicant to provide the necessary information. An example here, we've clicked yes and no on two different responses. On the one that's checked yes, there's a requirement to upload documents. It's kind of showing you that way that workflow goes. So by clicking on the yes, this would pop up. You would provide the necessary documents to move forward. And then until you've provided everything that's required, it won't allow you to move on with the green check. Special consideration tab. This is specific to military, in which if you're in the military current or a spouse, et cetera, you get some expediency within the processing of your application. This is that section here. Again, options to upload documents that are necessary to prove that you're eligible. Going on to the next section, again, this is one of the sections I'll touch on a little bit. Additional certifications and information. This is something that's come up now as a new a requirement for ARDs to maintain, but an opportunity for the registrant to upload document or to advertise whether or not they have certified technicians, ASE certified, ICAR certified, various vehicle manufacturer certifications, degrees, et cetera. It is the responsibility of the ARD to update and maintain that those certifications are still accurate to the staffing in which they have. During initial application, this is where you would be able to enter the types of certifications. So here we have an ICAR and an ASE certified technician that there's for this particular application, just as some examples. And again, as Clay was mentioning, for the business types, this is also something that you'll be able to maintain as part of the maintenance of your license once it's issued. So finally, going to the finalization of an application, because this is a digital process, this is where you can add this application to a cart once you check out, and we'll go ahead and add it here. And this is where you could see down at the bottom, there's an option to exit to dashboard. That would be an opportunity, and that was at the bottom of every tab. You could save it, you save your progress, come back to it later and complete it. But for this, we're gonna go ahead and add it. Before she adds it to the cart, I know it's kind of small, but in the top right-hand corner, there is a shopping cart with an icon. I believe it has a number there. Does it say 2, I think?
Yeah.
Possibly. It's kind of hard for me to see, but there's a number there. As soon as she hits add to cart and check out, it's going to navigate us to the cart. That number is going to increase by 1, so now there's 3. So the nice feature about this, and before I start talking about it, I'm going to let her go ahead. For this demo, we have 3 applications in there. Go ahead and click on 1 or 2 of them, and let's proceed to check out. So as she starts putting in all the billing information, and don't write down the credit card number, it's maxed out, I promise you're not going to be able to purchase anything with it. The nice feature about this, and I think this is something everyone's raised, is the ability to pay for multiple applications at one time, renew multiple registrations at one time. Just like you can with Amazon or any other online shopping service, you could throw as many applications as you need in here, whether it's an ARD with subsequent licenses like smog check, future vehicle safety inspection, or multiple technician type licenses. Whether you have 2 or 3 locations, or you're a corporation which it's a chain store. I have 100 locations, and I'm initially coming to California. You can put all 100 applications into that cart and check out one time, one payment. So as she's finalizing that, she's going to hit pay and submit. Once this is done, you get a confirmation. Confirmation pops up. There's an application tracking number that a lot of you may be familiar with when you first apply. This is the way you can track that application. And we're going to go ahead and, in addition to this, there's also email confirmation. I'm not going to do screenshots or verify that, but we'll go back to the dashboard, and what I'll point out here is once applications are submitted, aside from the email confirmation, this is where emails will go out to the ownership structure as it's placed for signature. They're going to electronically acknowledge that this application is being opened under their name. They're aware of it because the system does allow for anyone that you designate within your business structure to apply for these on your behalf, but whoever's listed as the owners are the ones that are going to have to certify for it. Once it goes through its process, once it goes through its review, all the processing is completed and an application is approved and a license is issued. The licenses will become visible to you on your dashboard, as you could see down here on the bottom, where you can click, do all your maintenance, et cetera. So that all of any and all licenses that you have that are associated to you would be listed here. And I think that's the demo.
And real quick, before we get into questions, this is kind of the first pass. There's multiple phases to this project. I'm really pleased with the product, and I hope it kind of passes the Amazon experience type test we were all kind of looking for. But certainly we're looking forward to scope phase 2. This will probably be a 4 or 5 phase project. So certainly more in the pipeline to come as we look to kind of continue to modernize and grow these programs for the future.
And maybe one last thing I'll point out, a lot of the logic to dependencies on you have to have an ARD before you can apply for smog check. Some of the links that are there, it shows associated licenses. You can apply for subsequent licenses. It's all tied together. There's going to be the ability to carry over information so you're not typing in duplicative information across multiple applications that are for the same location. So there is a lot of logic that's built in here to streamline the process, to simplify it, and in some cases, in a perfect scenario, get licenses issued in a very, very timely manner. So.
Awesome.
All right. Very, very fascinating. I mean, I had not seen this yet, so this is all new to me as well. So obviously I knew we were working on it, but the demo was pretty enlightening. So all I can say is, wow, that's great work. Sujan, was it Sujan Ganesh?
Yes. Suja, yes. She's from the Illumin team. Thank you, Suja, for...
Yeah, I just want to thank her for helping us run the demo remotely. I guess she is somewhere. I don't know where, but it worked.
It did.
Great job. All right, questions, comments?
I'm just taken away. Clay, I know how long you've worked on this project, and between Breeze and everything else, getting sidetracked, and then the plug gets pulled, to see the progress you've made on this new app and the ability to do this electronically is just beyond words. And it's something a long time coming for a lot of our members and a lot of the businesses we deal with. So looking forward to seeing the rollout and how this thing progresses. Thank you.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. It is overdue, and I'm glad we're finally getting us there. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thanks, John. Matthew.
I assume the system will probably have, so if your registration is due in January or whatever month, you'll get an automated reminder like a month ahead of time or something?
Yeah, whatever you choose as your preferred communication method, we could text you, we could email you. Okay. So yes, there will be notifications and some ability to kind of choose how you receive those notifications as well. Yeah.
Thank you.
Jack.
Thank you for the presentation. The presentation was good, but the demonstration was excellent. I mean, that's fantastic. I mean, that's going to make it a lot easier for, applications. In terms of timeline, I know you've got some dates. Realistically, when would this be up and running? What do you think, Clay?
My hope is still April 28th at this point. We've had some kind of last minute unanticipated stuff come up. AB 107 is a bill that was just signed that's created some additional military requirements. So we're just trying to balance how much of that we squeeze into the initial release, or do we wait? But I think it's April or very soon thereafter. I don't see any huge delays at this point. So yeah. It's really just a question of how do we roll it out in the best way possible. Yeah.
The only other comment I would make as this thing is progressing, obviously, there are glitches, right? Someone will get on it, can't get through the next stage, is stuck, can't upload documents. I'm assuming that you'll still offer the option to file by paper. still. I mean, that'll be, you know, obviously you're going to encourage this process, but if they get stuck and they're like, oh, I got to move this stuff along, and yeah.
There's always the ability or option to submit paper.
Yeah.
And the first thing we do is we take that piece of paper and we key it into the system and we see if it passes the same validations that you would do if you submitted it online.
So that's how it's going to work. So
yeah.
if it's in a paper, you're going to plug it in yourself.
Absolutely
if
right.
Someone is not, you know, applying and they're not
yes.
capable.
And even, I mean, if an applicant doesn't want to provide an email address, obviously we can't provide deficiencies to that email address. But if an email address is included on a paper form, we can even create a temporary account and provide those deficiencies electronically and encourage that applicant to get through the process as quickly as possible. So yes, all those are built in.
Because I know, like on the paper applications, and there were some questions earlier about what you need to put in and what will, you know, reject the application. But like business licenses for certain local jurisdictions, they can take a long time, like 60 days, 90 days, because they see them as just a registration. And sometimes in the application, when the applicant is filling it out, they put pending on that. That shouldn't hold it up. Maybe the sales registration or something, there may be other issues that can hold it up, but my understanding is like when they put in pending, that would be something, when they do it online, that would be just like the paper, right? It's pending. You may not stop that process. You may not hold up the registration because of a business license.
Correct, and that's something I actually mentioned in the prior presentation when a different question was that all of those subsequent requirements that you have for the county jurisdiction, et cetera, is not going to hold up this application. This application will still get processed. We just require through validation that a response is provided. Where before, no response was a deficiency. That's gone because we're now requiring a paper application is still going to have that issue.
Yeah.
But by encouraging individuals to apply through this method, all that validation is built in so that if and when a response is required, they're going to give one. Now, it may require expansion on, there's still going to be communication to get what's necessary to process. That pending may not be the perfect example of it, but that's not going to hold it up.
Yeah, because I know on some of them it says yes, no, but there may be, like, you know, you can't fill in, and it's a maybe, or you need to have an explanation. That would, if you fill that out, that still would complete that stage and go to the next
Correct.
Because I saw the green, you know, I saw green, and if you can't get to the next stage, it won't let you. It locks you down. You can't move forward, and you're stuck.
And there's also tips as well to guide the applicant as to what's being required and what's missing. Errors will pop up and explain why it's not allowing them to move on. It's similar to, like I said, a lot of online applications. If there's a deficiency, we're trying to spell out the deficiency as best as possible so that they can correct it and move on to the next step. Ultimately, we're always a phone call away. They can call and ask for assistance.
And that was going to be the last question. So they get stuck and like, frustrated. I pick up the phone. Hey, I can't get through this. There'll be someone they can talk to that they can walk them through the process.
Yeah, the platform's pretty flexible in that basically what it allows is back-end licensing staff to view that dashboard exactly as the customer sees it. So yes, there's some pretty robust help capabilities, and yes, BAR's still a phone call away to assist. I mean, obviously the goal is to minimize those calls as much as possible, but that support will absolutely be there, yeah.
All right, thank you very much.
Yep, let's go, Matthew.
Kind of a piddly question, but so when you for example, on the DMV, if you go renew a a registration, you have to pay a convenience fee of whatever, $6. Is there any additional fees? Okay.
There is a small fee, and BAR is going to eat that fee. Okay. Our goal is to encourage people to apply online, not.
I did not want this to be a deterrent for that process, so no, we decided to take that on ourselves.
Yeah, they're just taking it out of your check, is that?
Yeah.
Check.
Yeah. We're all pointing fingers.
Thank you.
All right, next, Bud, Rice.
I also had the renewal question, so that was a good one, and that was a great answer, by the way. I have to agree with everybody here. Great platform in terms of how you'll be able to use it. I'm not sure if I heard whether or not technicians can also. Is there a technician component where they can put in what their certifications are on the license? I thought I heard that, but I wasn't quite sure. But that's available here too, right?
So
technicians.
To apply for licensure or to add their certifications to the station?
Certification.
So the one tab that I talked about is one of the highlights, so you can add the certification. ASC ICAR was the example.
Okay.
Oh, yes, that's built in, and you're able to maintain that as the registrant.
Okay, and then the last question for me is, can you print your license instead of having to wait for the mail to get it in the mail? Can you print it and post it?
Man, great question. I would have slipped you a 20 to ask that question. So, as part of this project, one of the ideas that came up as we went through was to why don't we allow licensees to print their own wall licenses? And the answer was there's no statutory or regulatory reason why we couldn't do that. So yes, you will be able to print your own wall license. We're not going to mail you a wall license anymore. Once all the traffic's moved on to there's some legacy stuff in the queue that has to get processed and worked through. But yes, moving forward, you'll print your own wall license, which fixes a whole bunch of issues.
Oh, yeah.
In terms of initial registration and having those barcodes available. And, yeah.
Perfect. Okay.
Additional comments or questions from the advisory group, those who are listening in via WebEx? Let's open it up for public comment. Anyone in person? How about public comments via the WebEx?
All right, we have the Q&A panel open. If anyone would like to make a comment, please type comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of the screen. Or you may simply raise your hand. It looks like we have a comment from Rob Wright. So Rob, you should be able to unmute yourself if you'd like to make your comment.
Who was it? Robert.
And Rob, you are unmuted.
Great. How is everyone doing? I was just making a comment that it was a great job on the Elm project, and very exciting to see it all come to fruition. So I think it'll be a great step for the repair industry, and it'd be much easier for everyone to comply, especially with the application process. I think that'll greatly speed it up, and appreciate everything that Clay and Patrick have done, and everybody on the Elm project.
Thank you, Rob. I hope everything's going well. I hope you've landed on your feet in your new job there, and hope to see you sometime soon.
All right, I see no further requests for comment. Shall I close the Q&A panel? All right, the Q&A panel's closed.
Yes, thank you. I missed that. Any other last thoughts, comments? Yeah, Mr. Rice.
I was going to do this in the open comment, but since I got you guys sitting here, kind of a follow-up to what Matt was saying and you were saying, Pat, that maybe how do you manage that transition? One thought I had, and quite frankly, I've actually done with BAR before, is I've executed the licenses. They were not activated. They held the activation. A rep came out to the location, did the inspection, made those licenses active at that point in time, and shut off the other licenses. Then you can count out the cash box and say, okay, all this goes to you, and leave $50. I owe you $50, and the guy takes his stuff away with him or whatever, and now you've made that transition, and there was no delay. There was no delay. So I just wanted to say that and see if there's anything like that you think might be a normal process that somebody like Matt could take advantage of in the future.
So that's actually something we currently do with existing process as it is. As long as it's communicated to licensing staff that there's a change of ownership, we time the issuance of one and the cancellation of the other. That's all coordinated with the sale and the transaction taking place. We ask same questions in here as a change of ownership. Again, as long as that information is conveyed and licensing staff is aware of it, we can accommodate all of that. And that is done currently with the paper process as well. And that will not change here, whether or not it's getting out additional information as far as public outreach, but that is the existing process.
Yeah, but what's great about that is it gets you around this delay that he was worried about, where you're down for 45 days or something. You can get it right to the handoff by doing it that way. So if you guys can do that as a normal course of business, that's fantastic. So thank you.
Anything else? All right, thank you. Looking forward to April.
Yeah, more to come as we get closer. Obviously, there'll be a bunch of communication as we get closer to rollout and deployment and all that. So
thank you, Patrick, and thank you, Clay. All right, these next few agenda items should go fairly quickly. Enforcement statistics are quarterly handout on our enforcement data. Any comments or questions from the advisory group? Any comments from the public? Moderator, you can open it up for public comment on this real quickly.
All right, I've opened up the Q&A panel. If any member of the public would like to make a comment, please type comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of your screen and submit it to all panelists, or you may simply raise your hand. I do see we have a request for comment from an attendee identified as Saley. Saley, you should be able to unmute yourself. We'll try that one more time. So Saley, you should see a request to unmute yourself. Go ahead and unmute yourself. All right, she or he did type the question in the comment field. It looks like they're having technical issues. Would you like me to read the question?
Yeah, please.
Okay, the question is, what about people that do not have computer skills? Will we still print and mail the license to them?
Yes, this is going back to the last presentation, so we're kind of a public comment period on past that, but I'll go back and answer it. As it relates to the licensing application, yes, we said that there still be paper processes allowed for those who are not equipped or not proficient or in the digital world, myself included. So I understand the reliance on paper. We'll still have those processes available.
All right, and that's the last request for comment. Shall I close the Q&A panel?
Yes, please, on the enforcement statistics agenda item. Licensing statistics, another quarterly handout that that is provided with each of these meetings. Any comments from anyone on the advisory group? Seeing none. Public comments? Moderator, you may open it up for public comment on this agenda item very quickly. This is just the quarterly statistical data regarding our program, licensing program.
All right, the Q&A panel is available, and attendees may also raise their hand. We'll give you a moment. All right, I see no requests. Shall I go ahead and close the Q&A?
Yes, we may. You may.
Okay.
Thank you. All right, agenda item number 11 is for public comment for any items that were not on the agenda. Anyone in person have any public comments for any items that weren't on today's agenda? All right, moderator, we can also open it up for public comment for the WebEx attendees for any items not on the agenda today.
Thank you. I've opened up the Q&A panel. If any member of the public would like to comment, please type comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of your screen and submit it to all panelists, or simply raise your hand. We'll give you a moment. Okay, I see no requests for comment. Shall I close the Q&A panel?
Oh, yeah, say yes to her.
Oh, yeah. Yes, please.
Okay, it's closed.
Thank you.
I was going to ask the chief, is it possible for us to lock the door until we get a public comment? Can we do that? No? Thank you.
And then our next bar advisory group meeting, agenda item number 12, it has been rescheduled to the initial date that we had advertised or mentioned last year was April 20th. That date has been changed. I have a conflict that week. It will be taking me out of town. So we had to move it to April 27th, the following Thursday. So please make note of that. It should be posted on our website. April 27th, 2023. I believe we are scheduled for Headquarters 1, DCA Headquarters 1. That's this room that we're sitting in presently. But pay attention as we get closer to the meeting date and when we post the notice. Sometimes those locations change. We we get bumped from the room from time to time, and we might get moved to the other headquarters 2 building that we've been also held these meetings at. Any questions, any comments regarding the next meeting date or the schedule? The full schedule for the balance of the year, the remainder of the year, is posted on our website for July, the April 27th meeting, the July meeting, and the October meeting. Agenda items, feel free to offer them at any point in the next, as we'll be thinking about our agenda for the April meeting. Please send those to me or Zach or anyone else at the Bureau that you'd like to communicate that or relay that information to. Any comments on that? Any public comments? One last time, I'll allow for the moderator to open up for a public comment relating to this item, anything relating to the agenda, the next advisory group meeting, this agenda item.
Okay, the Q&A panel is available. If any member of the public would like to comment, please type comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and submit it to all panelists, or simply raise your hand. We'll give you a moment.
I think we can close it.
Yes, thank you.
All right, one last thought before we adjourn. I want to remind everyone that we will be holding a public workshop at 2 o'clock promptly in this room today. Again, the informational workshop will be a discussion on automotive repair transaction requirements, specifically as it relates to electronic or digitalized type of transactions, not necessarily paper transactions, and some of the software systems that have been built to facilitate those transactions. So we have agreed to host a public meeting on this topic today, and it is scheduled from 2 to 3:30 p.m., but we will adjourn once the business is completed. That could be after 3:30 or before 3:30. So look forward to seeing all of you, or as many of you as are interested, here at 2 o'clock when we reconvene. That should do it for today. I want to thank our moderator and our technical assistants, Bryce and Zach, and I've forgotten my other moderator's name here. I'm sorry. Tricia. Thank you, Tricia, for your assistance and helping us with the meeting today. And if there are no other thoughts or comments or concerns, we will adjourn today's meeting. Thank you all for attending. It is 12:37 p.m. We are adjourned.